of what they called Himmler's friend circle, the friend circle of Himmler. So the circle of friends for Himmler, Himmler's Freudenskreis. So these guys got together, and they imposed upon the head of the German government to instate Hitler as the chancellor. So Hitler's connections to Indonesia go back to the very beginning.
Yeah, and that Red House report, you have the date of November 27th, 1944, and do I not have enough information to understand completely? That was my question. It seems like was it the Germans themselves who were saying, basically, we're going to lose this war and we have to get all this money from Volkswagen and everybody out of the country into neutral? Was it the Germans around Hitler?
Oh, yeah. These are the people who put him in power. Now they realize they're going to lose the whole thing. So it was the Germans who were connected to the financiers, connected to the corporations, but it was also the SS. The SS was determined that none of their assets would fall into the hands of the Allies. The Wehrmacht, the actual army, had a different point of view. We're fighting a war. We lose, fair is fair. The SS wants to continue to fight, and the only way to do that is to expatriate the gold and the assets and the technology. More than 400 branches of these German companies were formed in the last year of the war abroad, as places to hide everything. So, we published this in our own congressional record. We were aware of it. We knew it. We were complaining about it, including the United States had a lot of German companies set up in 1944 and 45. And the International Bank of Settlements in Switzerland was washing all the Nazi money, and the president of that bank was an American, but all the board of directors were Nazis. I mean, it's incredible. So if you're looking at stolen Nazi technology, that's the place to start. Because it's all there, it's documented, it's factual. They were moving all these assets out like crazy, all over the world. And they were sending a lot to Japan because Japan was still fighting. So they sent atomic energy secrets to them. They sent entire, Messerschmitts broken down in submarines and sent that. They sent technology over there. They were, these guys were serious. They wanted to continue the fight long after they lost the war in Europe.
Well, I also thought that your point, it was chapter 2, Origins of Global Jihad, that Oppenheim was, I think, an instigator. What I realized is that reading, you're brilliant, and the work is brilliant, but it's like you have to study every page, and I want to look up every other word, and I want to go to Google, and pretty soon you just start, God, this is so layered, and so I don't pretend to have full comprehension. But if I understood that Oppenheim was either an instigator of or was in linked to the fatwa, that there was a jihad fatwa after World War I.
During World War I, the outbreak of World War I. Max von Oppenheim was the archaeologist, and he was so-called archaeologist, and he went to the Kaiser and said, this is going to work. Go to the Sultan of Turkey, of the Ottoman Empire, and convince him to issue a fatwa of jihad, the first ever in the world, global jihad, against all the unbelievers. And that will get everybody in North Africa, the Middle East, to rise up, against the colonial powers. And you'll be able to win the war this way. Between the Kaiser and Turkey, who are allies, we'll take over the whole thing, And that was the idea. It didn't work because the Arabs were just not that susceptible to a fatwa. We tend to think that a fatwa has the force of law, and it actually doesn't really, but it's a statement, right? So they issued the fatwa, and it didn't work. And then in the 1930s, they issued a fatwa again. The Nazis said, we'll issue a fatwa, and we'll get all of the Arabs to rise up against the British and, and the Americans and everybody else. And then that didn't work. And then during the Cold War, the CIA went and did it again, And then Eisenhower said, okay, let's issue a fatwa. Let's have the Muslims declare a jihad, against the Russians. What could possibly go wrong, So all of the Central Asians, these people who hate each other, let's get them to join together under their religion, bury their differences, and go after Russia. That'll work. And even Alan Dulles said, Mr. President, I'm not sure. And Alan Dulles was ready for anything, But he said, I'm not sure this is going to work out the way we planned. And of course, it was a mistake. But all of that started, yes, with Max von Oppenheim in 1915, when they convinced the Sultan to issue that fatwa that all Muslims around the world had to rise up in jihad against the foreigners.
And jumping to the mystical, do you think that Fatima was another chess move by one of the non-humans to create that miracle, tying Christianity and Christ into the miracle?
Well, I think
1917, 1918, in that period?
Yeah, I think I think Fatima, I made this whole, I was on Coast to Coast with this for like hours, and on Jimmy Church's thing talking about Fatima just when it happened for the anniversary. And, the idea that this was a UFO event, to me, seems pretty obvious. The religious stuff got added later, was projected onto it much later, because the kids who were involved in this thing were not particularly religious. Portugal, under that time, the Catholic Church was being proscribed, like it was in Mexico. So there was no powerful Catholic Church in Portugal at the time, but this suddenly made them powerful. Right? So the whole Fatima experience was retooled to represent the Virgin Mother warning the world against Russia. It goes back to Russia again. And Fatima is all about Russia. In fact, it's so much about Russia, the little kids who were involved, the Fatima children, the 3 children, didn't know what the word Russia meant. They thought it was the name of a girl in another village, right?
Wow.
So they come back, and then the church talks to them, and the priest talks to them, and the government talks to them, and then the whole thing gets tooled into the Virgin Mother is worried about Russia. And this is 1917. This is when the revolution is happening. World War I, it's in the middle of World War I. All this stuff is going on. And the Virgin Mother is really nervous about Russia. Russia has to be brought back to Christianity. That was her message.
Well, which ET would be served by this if Christ was a science team, which is one of the theories put down here 2,000 years ago to manipulate time from apocalypse? That's one version. That you had the other avatars of Buddha and Krishna and Christ coming within a 500-year period. And then 656 AD came the strange Mohammed. And then it's like different players were working through avatars.
Or the other way around. Different players were contacting forces that they didn't really completely understand. There's human agency in this too, to a certain extent, right? The entire basis of occultism is that we have agency. We are able to make the contact on our own and maybe control the contacts as well. There's probably a hidden science here, which is why we have so much confusion on this, because maybe the church knew extremely well what was going on and decided to use this as a weapon, as a hammer against Russia and against the beginning of the Soviet Union. There was, the church gets involved in this stuff, and they were very involved with the Nazis as well, to an unhealthy degree. So, there's that aspect to it too, so there's a point at which humans do get involved, and they do have certain degrees of capability and responsibility. Not every human being. If a human being has an alien abduction experience for something, they're usually a victim of that, right? They're a passive experiencer. But there are people who deliberately go out and try to have this contact. They follow the grimoires and the workbooks and the magical rituals in order to make that contact, in order to gain some benefit from it somehow.
And JPL, Jack Parsons, doing the horror.
He was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, the Whore of Babylon. And the more you read about it, it was that he was deliberately trying to get that alien being to come through that had been Aleister Crowley that had sketched, and that they were deliberately, maybe with the blessing of the American military, to see if they could access an ET. And then the danger or the question is, did that magical ritual open up a dimensional, whatever you want to call it, portal, doorway, something, and that bad things came through because of what they did?
Well, that's the point that Kenneth Grant made in his books. Kenneth Grant was the British magician who was a follower of Crowley, who knew Crowley personally. He wrote about Parsons and said Parsons and Hubbard, remember it was L. Ron Hubbard too. It was both Parsons and Hubbard conducting this magical ritual in the Mojave, that they opened a gate and something flew in. I mean, that was how Kenneth Grant typified it. And there was a UFO sighting before Kenneth Arnold and before Roswell by Jack Parsons' girlfriend, Marjorie Cameron, who then reported it to Parsons, and Parsons said that was the sign that they had made the contact and that Babylon was returning to Earth.
And you would define Babylon, Babalon, as opposed to Babylon. How would you define Babylon, and would it have had a direct link to the Anunnaki, Babylon, and Mesopotamia?
Well, it's definitely connected to Mesopotamia, to Sumeria specifically, because Crowley wrote that our tradition is historically authentic. It is the rediscovery of the Sumerian tradition. That's what Crowley specifically said. He linked his religion, he linked his entire worldview to ancient Sumer. And Parsons then picked up on that specifically, and then in his writings mentioned Sumer. Now remember, this is in the 1930s and 1940s. Not a lot was known about Sumer at that time, but they are all connecting it to Sumer. And Crowley's own contact, his extra-dimensional contact, was a being called Ivas, and he identified Ivas as a Sumerian priest who was actually a human, but with, sort of hybrid qualities, right? And that he was in contact with him, and then Parsons was doing the same thing, and that Babylon, of course, is a reference to Babylon, to Mesopotamia, to Sumer. So all of this goes back to Sumer. Long before, Zecharia Sitchin or Eric von Daniken or anyone else, Crowley and Parsons were working within that framework, within that understanding.
Well, when you and Whitley and I were having dinner, and I was telling you about that 7-hour discussion I had from the guy who retired from the DIA, and that this fits into the category of quote unquote Jehovah is a son of a bitch, and our government's greatest concern is when he comes back.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I mean, what is your? Because you're so much deeper read. I'm trying to catch up, but what is your perspective on that?
Well, I wrote a novel once years ago. It hasn't been published, but a line from it is relevant, and that is, the novel starts off by saying, in 33 A.D., God so loved the world, He gave His only begotten Son. Well, it's 2,000 years later, and God has changed His mind. So the idea being that.
That's pretty good. That's pretty nerve-wracking. That makes me feel nervous.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think that if Jesus came back, if Jesus came back today, he would be kind of pissed, and he would say to himself, I threw the money changers out for this, So, weapons of mass destruction, right? Mass with a capital M, long story. If you're a Catholic, you get it. And the problem I have, go on. Yeah.
If all of the different models of Homo sapien, going back to Lucy, 2 million years, if every one of them truly has been made by tall ETs that are at war with gray ETs and are at war with reptilians, which is the William Mills Tompkins story, and that they have been using Mars, this planet, all sorts of solar systems for their wars, then making genetic manipulation of already evolving primates on Earth for them means that our 2 million year reason for being is as androids to do a series of increasingly complex works for something that has demonstrated how violent it is, and it might explain why the current iteration of humans is so damn violent.
Well, and, we're talking about this in a spiritual context as well. I think if you look at the Buddha, for instance, and you referenced the Buddha and Jesus all happening within the same 500-year period, Buddha is saying, screw all this, right? It's alien versus predator, walk away. For the Buddhist perspective, this is all illusion. All the races are fighting each other. The gods are fighting each other. None of it matters. None of it is real. Pull yourself out of it. Just cut yourself off. No attachments, and you'll be okay. I mean, the Buddha's response to it was a plague on both your houses, right? Mm-hmm. Why should we side with any of these?
And Thomas Campbell, that physicist, would say that this whole universe is a simulation made to be an entropy reduction trainer for souls. And that all the battles going on in all the intelligences is specifically to train souls.
Well, and it fits in, again, with the Buddhist practice. I mean, if you were going to follow Buddhist teachings, you would be fighting your own genetic nature, right? You would be like a Buddhist monk would be celibate. They would eat nothing, whatever was given to them. They would not care about their physical bodies. They would use the body itself as a kind of machine, to liberate the soul. So, I mean, the idea that we mentioned earlier between, genetics and consciousness, the Buddhists look at it from that point of view. They say, well, consciousness is the only thing, and eventually even consciousness you'll get rid of, right? So you're just going to detach yourself from the world entirely. So you're not part of that process at all. So you're not linked to it, but use what physical capabilities you have to liberate the soul, because the body could be used to liberate the soul rather than entrap it. So turn the body against itself, basically, and then the soul will be liberated, and then you won't have to worry about anything else. That's a very simplistic way of putting all that. But, the idea of non-duality, right? Just don't accept yes or no. Don't accept black or white. All of it's bad.
And yet the yin and the yang is the persistent metaphor in this universe for how long since primates stood up. Sure. And that when what you said today that has left my mind a bit on fire is that our gene sequencing, the androidness of us, the hybridization of us is alien. But that inside of us, in the soul, the animus, something perhaps put a soul in these bodies that is not connected to the alien manipulators, and that the tension could explain why there is this terrible disconnect that I think that humans have a disconnect from themselves and from this planet in a very odd way, and always have had historically.
Well, we do, don't we? Don't we always say we want to go home?
Yeah.
We're always talking about that we don't really belong here. There's something wrong with this planet. Nothing. It's inhuman, basically. Yeah. We're always thinking that. We know it in our gut, right? That there's something wrong with this whole thing, right. And that could be it. It's the war between genes and consciousness. We cannot get these two on the same page, right? And that's probably deliberate.
The war between genes and consciousness, my God. And then the sigils. I knew a psychologist who taught at the university in Delaware when I lived in Philadelphia. And he showed me that he had one of the metal, they poured metal.
Hey, Linda?
Yeah?
I got to run, so I just wanted to say this is interesting, but I got to go. I got to get up early in the morning.
Okay, because I'm having one of the most fun discussions I can.
I know, so I just didn't want to look rude. I got to go. So.
All right, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yes. Yeah, but I'm also wearing out from. It's still that medicine still makes me tired too.
Sure.
So, but thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you. I love it.
Yeah, John.
All right, Linda, carry on. I'll talk to you on Sunday.
All right, doll. Later.
Bye.
Really, Peter, this is so fun because I don't think I know anybody else on the planet who has gone as deeply as you have in a whole bunch of subjects that I think are really critical to all of this. I really mean that. And what I was going to explain is this psychologist, he had purchased someplace from some antiquity dealer. It was the base numbers of what would make that layer cake of a sigil, because I know you know what a sigil is.
Right.
So he had and I believe it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it was 9 numbers, 3 layers deep. And then he showed me how that you would take then the whatever alphabet you were in and put that on top of the numbers, and your sect, your small sect, would have an agreement about the top layer of how you would, only as 6 people, you would know the connection of what you were saying between the letters and the numbers, and the only thing the world would ever see would be the spirals or squares or lines on the top, and that the sect would know how it related to the letters and the numbers.
Oh, I see what you mean. Right. Yes.
And that they did that complex coding in order to survive persecution politically and religiously.
Yeah, it makes sense. It was a coding system, and the sigils that you're talking about, there's all kinds of them, and a lot of them were used deliberately for occult purposes, right? Some of them were considered to be powerful enough to call the visitors into appearance, or to call them up, basically like an email, basically the right ones. And other ones, like you're talking about, are the ones that they use to identify themselves to each other, the people, the members of the sect. But nobody else would be able to understand it because they don't have access to the bottom layers. So yeah, I understand. I was not following until about halfway through, then I understood.
Oh, well, the sigils have always meant to me that there was so much fear, whether it was under Mesopotamia, how far back did I've always said sigils, you said sigils.
Either way.
Where did that start? Because that meant that humans were afraid not so much of each other, but outside forces, and they went to that much trouble.
Goes back really to the beginning. Some of the earliest examples, I think, are Babylonian. I'm not sure if they're Sumerian. I've got to think about that for a second. But I know that the earliest examples of magic squares and magic diagrams, diagrams that were encoded, go back at least to Babylon. So we're talking 4,000 years, maybe. Sumer, we're talking, 5,000 to 6,000 years, depending upon which Sumerian civilization we're talking about.
And those were the capricious gods. Violent gods that when you read that strict archaeology, and he wasn't thinking extraterrestrials among us or anything, and he's talking about the capricious, violent gods, and how the ziggurat would be used like a hybridization machine. Yeah. The fairest young female would be made to walk up those steps to commune in sexual intercourse with the so-called god in the little house on top of the ziggurat.
Right. Yeah, I write about that. In fact, I wrote a book called Tantric Temples. It's a very sort of big book with a lot of photographs in it from my time in Indonesia. And I go into the Sumerian and Babylonian practice that you just mentioned to show that it was taking place in Indonesia, even really in present day. You'll be amazed at what happens in that country. Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world, right? But their practices are more Hindu and Buddhist than anything else. And you'll be amazed at the kind of weird stuff that goes on there. Believe me, the stuff, put your hair on end. But one of the practices is sacred marriage. And sacred marriage takes place in a number of different circumstances, in a number of different places. But one of them is in a famous shrine that I went to, that I visited just for that purpose, to see what goes on. And you get married for the night to someone who is not your wife, right? Or not your husband. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. It's either a local prostitute who sort of staff this area, or it's somebody that you just picked up. And you're married for the night, and you have to consummate that wedding in a cemetery, which is attached to the shrine.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And it's done with the blessings of this Islamic government, right? That's because that's an old Javanese tradition, and they're not going to mess with it. So there are big signs of this is not for entertainment, but it's it's a very serious thing. And you're married by an imam, you're married by a Muslim priest, let's say, and you're walked 3 times around the grave of this famous prince and princess who died, because of love or something, and then you're paraded around there a couple of times, and it's an actual wedding. It's an official wedding. And then you have to get divorced the next day.
Well, what is it that they think that consummation after a marriage is doing to the unseen? What, ghosts? What is the...
Yeah, it's to attain spiritual power, for sure. It's a survival of tantric ritual, which is itself a survival of what you were just talking about on the ziggurat, in the little building at the top of the ziggurat, which I'm fascinated with and I've written about a lot. The priest is also the king, right, in ancient Sumer. And on New Year's Day is when he would go up there for this particular ritual. And he would consummate this, and people understood that he was consummating a sexual act with a goddess, with Inanna or Ishtar. And that would guarantee fertility for the whole nation when he came back down. Later, this was changed in different parts of Sumer, where the actual building was in a cemetery. And the priest or bishop, king and priest, would go into that particular room in the cemetery, like a mausoleum, where there was a woman waiting for him dressed as the queen of the sky. And they would consummate that there. And then it would go on. There were different iterations of this in different places, but it's the marriage of Shiva and Shakti in India, where in tantric terms the same ritual is then produced, but the idea is to attain altered states of consciousness as well as occult powers and abilities and all the rest. But it's important that at that moment you are not yourself and your partner is not their self. You've become identified through spiritual practices. You've been trained. You've become spiritual beings. You've become gods and goddesses, right? And so that actual wedding, that consummation of the act, is not between the two human beings, it's between the two spiritual powers, which then causes this strange rupture, because even in India, it takes place in a cemetery, just as it did in Babylon and Sumer, and as it does now in Indonesia. It takes place, and that connection is important. Because as I wrote in that book, Tantric Temples, what they're doing is they're collapsing time. You are actually performing a ritual of conception in a place of death.
Oh my God, I hadn't thought about it like that. On the other side of that sentence that you just said is another sentence that something in the unseen and maybe 9 millimeters away in another dimension is a parasite off of sexual energy?
Yeah, possibly. It depends on how you want to look at it. For the tantrikas, the people performing tantra, it's definitely not a parasite. This is a spiritual force. It's, whatever it may happen to be. And the same thing in Indonesia. They treat this practice like a novena, right? They will go back 9 times. Could be 9 different partners, but 9 times on specific dates chosen by the Javanese calendar, not by the regular calendar. So they go back 9 times, and at the end of that, they've interviewed people. Their businesses have prospered, or their relationships have improved, or they passed their tests. Whatever it was they wanted in the real world, in the mundane world, was accomplished if they went and did this thing. They had sex in a cemetery with someone they marry on the spot and divorce the next day.
It's incredible. I never heard of this before. I know that...
I'm sorry, Bill. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just have a question, because I'm listening and I'm really enjoying this conversation. But I wanted to know from Peter, is there any indication that this is mentioned in the poem of Gilgamesh? Because you spoke about pretty much Dilmun. And we found, and there's Dilmun that's been found here in North America and South America, and cuneiform. Is this where? How do you think that their connection, that this is found here in North America, and yet it's this artifacts that go back thousands of years here? What's the bridge? What do you think is the bridge that brings that together, that it's found here?
The bridge between the artifacts?
Well, how did it get here? How did the Dillman and the cuneiform get here in North America if it goes back thousands of years? Who brought it here? Because if you look at Chief Joseph's tablet, for example,
yep. Right.
I mean, it supposedly went down from generations to generations.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree. I mean, I wrote about this in Sinister Forces. That's that trilogy that I wrote. The very first volume talks about this a lot. I'm a firm believer in the diffusionist, point of view that Barry Fell and the other people have been promoting, that there was tremendous, trade and contact back and forth between, North Africa and Europe and the Americas long thousands of years before Columbus, right?
So are we talking Phoenicians, or, are we talking Atlanteans? Like, who would have the capability to do it, or was it through a land bridge?
Well, the Phoenicians would have had the capability. The Carthaginians would have had that capability.
But dear Peter, dear Peter, non-humans have been interacting with this planet forever, and UFOs took things all around it.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, but if you've seen my books, you know how document-based I am.
I'm waiting to literally dive into and be in your mind for I don't know how long it's going to take me to get through.
Are you both familiar?
I would suggest it. I'll tell you.
Are you both familiar with Klaus Dana?
Klaus Dana.
Yeah,
no.
he does archaeology around the world. It's considered almost fringe archaeology. Anyway, I can announce this now because he's a good friend of mine. He's a Viennan. He's from Vienna, and he's been working in the Philippines. It was top secret. Only a number of us knew. They discovered 2 lost cities in the Philippines. Now, he was never one to get into the ancient aliens theory hypothesis, but he told me that he's going to South America. Supposedly, they have not been vetted, and this is a man that's not. He doesn't get into this kind of theory, but now he says, Bill, I'm telling you, I'm starting to sway my opinion because what I am seeing that in South America, there's thousands of artifacts that may be ET related. So he's going there at the end of the year. Have you heard of anything that's going on in South America in that?
Well, recently the whole thing in Peru has been all over the place, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the mummy with the 3 fingers.
Right.
But I don't know what that's all about, though. I'm still of the mind that I want to have somebody prove it to me first, because we've been hoaxed so many times, as you know, that I'm camera shy. I'm gun shy. Well, I'm camera shy too. So I'm a little nervous about these things until so I don't really make comments on them until I can see better evidence, But Peru, I mean, even Mexico, what's his name? Earl Stanley Gardner, wrote that book of the stuff in Alcambaro down there, the weird, dinosaur sculptures and stuff they found buried, and he seemed to believe it was true that people have been sculpting dinosaurs when there shouldn't have been people and dinosaurs at the same time. And they look ET-ish, right? Some of the sculptures are definitely bizarre, and I've seen some of that in Indonesia and Malaysia as well. I've seen native, indigenous people creating all sorts of figurines and carvings that are dead ringers for grays. That's what they are. And I've heard people who lived in those cultures come and talk to me about that. I've talked to people who had these experiences, and these are indigenous people. These are not people even with television sets or smartphones or anything like that who are talking about ET experiences in the jungles.
And aren't the Vinca, V-I-N-C-A, those heads of the Vinca, and I think they are Southeast Asia? The heads, you might as well take drawings that human abductees have done, and it's the big slanted eyes and the narrow chin, and they're carved in stones, and it's not South America, it's another part of the world.
Yeah, well, I have a small statue that I picked up in, let me think for a second, I think it was Malaysia or Bali, possibly, or somewhere in Indonesia, which looks just exactly like that. I mean, it's a carved head, I mean, it's a gray. I mean, it's a gray. What else would you call it? It looks identical to those concepts. So, there's a lot of that tradition out there, especially when you get off the beaten path and go into the bush. If you go to the temples, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of temples buried in the Indonesian rainforest all over the place. You're going to find some strange, freaking stuff, I can tell you. Stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense when compared to what we know their iconography should have been.
And how would you compare what you've seen to Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Yucatan, in terms of Mayan and so forth? Is there a similarity in the jungle in Southeast Asia to the rest of the world?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is a temple. There's photographs of it in the book I mentioned. I didn't send it to you because I don't have an extra copy here, but I'll get one. It's full of photographs, and you can see for yourself. The photographs tell the story. And there's one temple which looks like it was just taken out of Mexico and just stuck in the middle of Indonesia. I mean, it is such a perfect Mexican architecture.
Huh.
Even down to the spouts, the water spouts with the dragon head sort of coming out, everything identical. And yet we know that that particular temple dates back to about 900 AD at the very latest. So what is that all about, right? I mean, it's identical to that. And the Theosophical Society in Indonesia, this is when the Dutch were still in charge before the war, they were conducting excavations up there because they were convinced that this was proof of some kind of cross-cultural contact between Indonesia and South America. They couldn't understand any other explanation for it. So I mean, there's a lot of that was going on, and a lot of the Indonesian leaders, the kings before the war, were tantric practitioners. They actually were very involved in occult practices, even though they were secular kings. Because in Indonesia at that time, in Java and places like that, there was no difference between a secular ruler and a sacred ruler. To the extent that today, you're not going to believe this, but it's true, and if you go there, you'll see it, and people will admit it, it's not a secret. To this day, the Sultan of Yogyakarta, which is the next major city in Java after Jakarta, very important city, college town, all the universities are there. I've spent a lot of time there. The Sultan of that city, once a year, has to go down to the seashore to a hotel built next to the sea in a special room and have sex with the goddess of the sea.
And who is the goddess of the sea?
Well, they know her name as far as mythology is concerned. But the problem is this is a sultan, which is an Islamic title. He's a Muslim leader of a Muslim city in a Muslim country, but he damn well better go down to the ocean once a year on the appropriate day and consummate a relationship with the woman they call Raya Kudul, which is the goddess of the ocean. I'm almost hesitant to say her name out loud. They are so fixated on this. There's pictures of her. She's always in green. She comes out of the ocean. She seduces young men and that sort of thing. But in this case, he has to go down there and consummate. And they've shown photographs of the hotel room, which is completely done in green. All the things that she likes, are in green. And in the old days, there was a secret passage that led from the Sultan's palace all the way down to the ocean. You can visit parts of it today, where he would go with his entourage and consummate this relationship, just like the Babylonian kings did and the Sumerian kings did thousands of years ago. He does the same thing in Indonesia today.
And is a young girl picked to be this goddess?
It's a closely held, carefully guarded secret. Nobody knows. But also every year there is a dance that's performed in the Sultan's palace. And it's a dance for a certain number of female dancers. The problem is one of the spots is always missing. And that's the spot for the queen of the sea to come out and dance with the others. So they all dance as if she's there. And people who attend this thing swear when they count the dancers, there's the right number of dancers, which means they've seen her and not realized it.
For heaven's sake. And what is the quid pro quo? The Sultan having intercourse with the goddess of the sea gains protection or what?
Oh yeah, it's definitely important to protect the city of Yogyakarta. It's like the most mystical place in Java. It's like Bali, which is not in Java, it's a separate island, but Yogyakarta is steeped in religion and mysticism. It's the only city in Indonesia that has a sultan, and it has its own governor. It's a city with its own governor. It's a unique place. And right straight in a straight line between the ocean and the palace, the palace is in the center. The other side of that straight line from the ocean to the palace is Mount Merapi, which is a volcano. And there's a guy who lives on the volcano, and his job is to keep the goddess of the volcano pacified so she doesn't erupt, right? And that's part of what the Sultan is responsible for, too. He appoints that person, he keeps the volcano from erupting, and the city is protected, and so on and so forth.
And what if the ziggurats and the Mesopotamian non-humans, that it really was a hybridization machine for real, right from the get-go, that there have been these waves of tweaking, and that whatever Cro-Magnon Homo sapien sapien is, it is being phased out, whether we know it or like it, into another model?
Well, yeah, there's been some speculation about that, that there's, this genetic programming taking place in very general terms. Nobody gets as specific about it as you do, but some of the people we've talked to sort of kind of off the record will say, well, there's a genetic aspect to all of this. There's a genetic programming aspect that might be in effect, and we're concerned about that as well, and we're watching to see if there's any trends genetically that are taking place, and is genocide, part of that genetic manipulation, right? If you wipe enough people out of a specific gene pool, well, they're gone forever. So that capability is lost to the human race. So that's why I'm a very big fan of miscegenation myself. I think there should be absolute mixture of everybody, right. just to strengthen the gene pool. But there's this idea of, maybe genetic manipulation is taking place. Maybe there is one specific set of genes that are considered more important than others. But obviously, we're still not there yet. We haven't reached the omega point in evolution where the genes are concerned. We're still reproducing like crazy and coming up with different models and different patterns and different characteristics. So to us, it looks like it's taking a really long time. But maybe for someone from the outside, this is happening in the twinkling of an eye. We just can't tell.
And isn't it true that Enlil, the top dog of the Anunnaki, was enraged when Enki helped humans, because Enlil looked at us as a temporary slave race that was created with some of their genes to be smart enough to take orders, and then he wanted all of the human creations annihilated because it was an affront to him that they had created creatures with some of their bloodline, and Enlil wanted the bloodline of the Anunnaki to be pure.
Well, yeah, there's some evidence for that in the texts. It depends on how you interpret the Sumerian texts, right, the cuneiform texts. There is some, indication that there was anger at the creation of the humans who were supposed to be slaves. And there was the desire to wipe them out by Enlil against Enki. But there's another aspect to the story which we should not forget, and that is the descent of Inanna into the underworld.
Like a Jack Parsons, or how would you? I've never understood it. And isn't Inanna the one who is in the stone with the 3 clawed toes and the 3? That is Inanna, right? That's
a later iteration. That's sort of an Ishtar, but yes, a later iteration of Inanna, sometimes referred to as a Lilitu, right? As Lilith, as one of the demon, the female demons that would attack men at night, or sometimes kill babies and that sort of thing. So it got really mixed up the later on it got. Too many things got projected onto that image. But basically, yes, Inanna was the ultimate sort of female goddess of the Sumerian pantheon. She was a goddess of the sky, a goddess of the planet Venus. And she descended, according to this ritual, into the story, into the underworld, where she hung for 3 days on a cross, right, until she was revived and then resurrected. So the whole, Christian, crucifixion thing was predated there by thousands of years. But it was a woman who was crucified. She went to see her sister at Eshkigal, who was the goddess of the underworld, and Ereshkigal despised her. And in order for Inanna to descend to the underworld, she descended 7 levels. That number 7 is very important. She descended 7 levels. At each level, she gave up an article of clothing. So here we have the dance of the 7 veils, right? At the end of the 7 steps, she's completely naked. Ereshkigal kills her with a glance. According to the story, it's very difficult to understand, but somehow a burst of light came out of the eyes of Ereshkigal and transfixed Inanna, killed her. She hung her on a stake, basically on a cross in the underworld, hung her there to die for 3 days. But then her husband, Inanna's husband, Dumuzi, who was a shepherd, sends 2 creatures, 2 hybrid beings into the underworld to rescue her. These are not human, not animal, there's something in between. And one is carrying the water of life, and one is carrying the food of life. They go down the 7 levels, they found Inanna, they sprinkle her with the food and water of life. She becomes resurrected, and then she rises up the 7 levels, taking her clothing back as she does. And then she bursts out of the underworld into the rest of the world. But as the Sumerian text says, her demons preceded her. Basically, she opened the door to the underworld, and all the weird stuff that was there came out into the rest of the world. Basically, Pandora's box.
Like Jack Parsons doing the Whore of Babylon magical ritual.
Opening a gate to let Babylon through. Yeah.
And what you're saying is that theme is probably everywhere. And what does it mean? And it's interesting that what's been sort of pounding in my head is there is the scripture, he who believeth in him who sent me shall have everlasting life. And I've always read that as that the opposite is implied. He who does not believe in him who sent me shall not have everlasting life, as if there is something about the big box of everything that has to do with eternal life versus not eternal life, that immortality is the gain of some dimension and not of others, and that the Christ resurrection was a symbol of the returning always to life, because he was connected with he who believeth in him who sent me shall have everlasting life, and that there would be battles going on between those who had this access to immortality versus those who did not.
Yeah, you could say that the promises that are made by especially by the monotheistic gods, right? The promises of eternal life, the promises that you'll live in a hereafter, are seductive approaches to consciousness, because eternal life makes no sense genetically, right? As I said before, it doesn't make any sense at all. The genes would not want that. So the gods who created us, let's say, call them gods or whatever you want to call them, created the genetic code, created us as a slave race, let's say, did not want us to have consciousness. Right? That was not part of the bargain. We were supposed to be automatons. We were supposed to be androids or robots or whatever.
Right.
We were supposed to just do what we were told. We were not supposed to have consciousness. Once we had consciousness, there was a problem. There was a big problem for the gods, right? So they had to come down and recreate this whole thing where they would inject this consciousness tease in there. Well, you'll live forever if you just keep doing what we say.
I see. Seduction.
Right. I think it was seductive. I don't think anybody really thought of eternal life until they actually had consciousness itself, right? And who knows when that moment started. I've been reading a lot of the scientific literature on this. No one really knows exactly when consciousness started. The idea is that we were probably, there was probably humans of some sort on the planet without consciousness, because the nervous system wasn't developed, strongly enough to support a conscious state. We were basically instinctual beings like animals, basically, although animals probably are pretty conscious. But we were sort of instinctively acting and reacting to things without much of consciousness. It was probably consciousness of death, awareness of death, that might have started this whole thing happening about consciousness. I don't know. Scientists are, divided on this, and they're still studying it, and I'm following that, as closely as I can. But I think that the approach was a seductive approach. We know you have consciousness now, and you're thinking about things you're really not supposed to be thinking about. You're not supposed to be thinking about life after death. You're not supposed to be thinking about living forever. You're not supposed to be thinking that death is obscene. All of this is not what we planned. So now we have to do something about it. And maybe religion is the control mechanism. I don't know.
I have a question. Now, I just have a quick question. When you say that, is it possible they underestimated the creation process, the evolution of humanity? And just similar to, I'll use an analogy, like if we create something in a lab and it spins out of control where it evolves into something that we had no idea it was going to become, it could have become that kind of a scenario?
Sure. I mean, just go back to H.G. Wells and the Island of Dr. Moreau.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant discussion of this very topic that nobody appreciated because it was written in the 19th century. But that's really what that's all about. Suddenly these creations get consciousness. Now what do we do?
And the Greeks, who I think were extraterrestrial as well, the Titans versus Zeus, but the Greeks had a word, hypostasis. And hypostasis was as above, so below, the insertion from as above into the container bodies. That was the pura vida, the spark of consciousness in life. That was the hypostatic moment. And that Christ, for example, would be a hypostatic event when there is a joining from the divine into the matter world, and that this whole intersection about who were the avatars. Were they all extraterrestrials that humans didn't understand, and therefore they have become something divine? Or are they truly from another dimension in which a hypostasis, an insertion, that our souls are actually quite extraordinary, even if our bodies were made to be somebody else's androids?
Well, the genetic code that was, if we talk about panspermia, directed panspermia, the genetic code came to this planet, right, and evolution was the result. And all living things share the genetic code. Every living thing on the planet has the genetic code. It has DNA. What if our particular planet had just the right combination of elements that it gave rise to a species that the originators were not predicting, because perhaps they had seeded the same DNA on different planets in different places that had different gravity, different oxygen, different amounts of carbon and silica and all the rest of it, and would grow more adaptable slave races. And in our case, didn't. In our case, it was like, oops, there was some combination of factors that led us to this point where we think that we're unique in the planet, in the solar system, or in the galaxy, in the universe, and we may be unique or relatively unique. Maybe the founders, the originators, are freaked out by what's happened, right? Because now we're growing at this exponential rate. We're writing books, and we're on television. We're doing all this other stuff, and we're building rockets to the moon, and we're trying to get off the planet. I don't think this is what they intended. I think this was, the law of unintended consequences where we're concerned. So it might have just been that our planet was just the right, it was the Goldilocks, like they say, right? Just right, but not just right for life. I think life might grow on other planets as well, just differently. I think it was just right for consciousness. That's a possible way to look at it.
But if they've been here for thousands of years, what would be their current agenda then? Are they just weary about what we're capable of going outward and affecting other civilizations due to our nature in general? I mean, are they here for some type of other agenda? And are they different races working with different governments to meet that agenda?
Well, I mean, you can go that way, but then you have to, it has to be consistent with with everything then, right? We have to find reasons to explain a lot of things if we go that route. What if, look at it from another point of view, talk about the lab experiment, the island of Dr. Moreau or something like that. They're just sitting back and watching maybe until we get to the point where we do go off planet. And maybe even that's not worrisome enough. If we're going off planet, but we're not going off dimension, maybe that's all they care about. If we're not penetrating into their dimension, or wherever it is that they're living, whatever is their space, maybe it's just not a problem for them. Maybe they're amused, or maybe they're curious, maybe they're learning something from what we're doing, and they kind of come in and out, and they finagle a little bit, and they manipulate, and they say, what if we do this, like a scientist in a laboratory? You know, what if we drop this in here into this petri dish, and, you know, what'll happen? Right,
and
let's see what goes on.
Where things would really be bad is when we do fission, we drop atomic bombs or hydrogen bombs, and we tear into other dimensions. I think that is a physical fact.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's also possible, which may have led to this explosion of interest in UFOs after the war. Right? I mean, there's a lot of people who insist that dropping those bombs did something, you know, right, to bend something in space-time or to create some kind of hole between the dimensions, if only, you know, for a short time.
And they seem fixated on nuclear facilities, bases, silos.
Yeah.
I mean, there seems to be a link there.
And maybe not because of the explosions themselves, but because of the manipulation of matter that nuclear energy represents, right? We're tinkering with the very building blocks of matter. I mean, that's the whole goal. It's the whole process, is to get down to the nucleus, is to get right down in there and see what we can do to move things along, to change things. And, you know, now with the quantum experiments that we're doing and the CERN collider and all the rest of it, we are experimenting with the Big Bang. We're trying to recreate the Big Bang. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, and I have, in August, I am supposed to talk with his Canadian physicist who has, as I guess you would say, an experiment into CERN to do. And I talked with him briefly on the phone, and the concept is, if they can, it's not quite doubling, it's about 30% more, get more power into CERN for this particular experiment. His hypothesis is they will then be able to create black holes, mini black holes.
Sure.
And that they have some instrument that they think they could then monitor whether gravity waves are moving into or out of the mini black holes. And if they get that measurement, it will be the first time that we have contacted a parallel universe.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's exciting, but
very exciting. Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Right, exactly. What could possibly go wrong?
I have to ask Peter this one question because it always fascinates me. Do you think that they're withholding evidence within the Vatican vaults of extraterrestrial life, and they know they have it, or they have some type of indication that there could be a link there, and they're just not releasing it to the public, and they're just suppressing it?
Well, remember that the term, even the concept of extraterrestrial life, is really a 20th century concept, right? Mm-hmm. So, and the Vatican's been around for like not 2,000 years, but close enough to it, maybe 1,700. So, 1,600 years. So, their archives and the amount of information they have would be on a lot of what would have been called supernatural phenomenon or angelic or demonic phenomenon, right? Which today we would go look at and say, well, this is extraterrestrial phenomenon they're writing about. But at that time, it was always seen in supernatural terms, in religious and spiritual terms. So they probably have a lot of information where that's concerned because that was their job, basically. I mean, Fatima is one brilliant example of that. And Fatima, to me, was the first Roswell, in the sense that something happened. There was a UFO event that was seen by a lot of people, that was experienced, that actually happened, and then it was manipulated for political purposes, right? People were told what they saw was not what they saw. And that happened in Fatima, and then later would happen almost exactly 30 years later with Roswell. from
And
1917 to 47. Yeah.
Didn't it also happen in Nuremberg, Germany in 1543? Well, that woodcut that has the various spheres and the spear, and there was a battle that took place, and it was vivid enough for somebody to do that woodcut.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
No, besides, right, there's that. But there's a lot more than that, right? So the church would have had a lot more eyewitness testimony, a lot more things, records of witchcraft, Inquisition, interrogations and stuff, some of which might have been real, right? Not everybody who was, arrested and accused of witchcraft were just innocent victims in the sense that they were, people just picked up for monetary reasons usually, and for a lot of other reasons. There might have been one or two genuine practitioners in that mix. Giordano Bruno being one of them, right, who was executed in 1600 by the Catholic Church. Here was a guy who was a genuine mystic and a genuine occultist, and also a spy at the same time, sort of the forerunner of all of that whole concept. And here was somebody they killed who did, talk about other worlds, who did talk about, extraterrestrial matters, but who was silenced by the church for being a heretic. So I think there's a lot there. I think there's a lot that's in the archives that is not classified as contact with alien intelligences, but today would be understood that way if we could get access and if we read the ancient languages, right? If we could read, not just reading ancient Greek and Latin, but able to manage the typefaces and the handwritten, documents and testimony and all the rest of it. I think there's just a lot there. And I'd love to get my hands on it, but I wouldn't even know where to begin if I got inside the archives. I wouldn't know what shelf to begin with. I mean, there's just so much.
Right, and who do you think was fighting in the skies of Nuremberg?
I think it was the Young Republicans. And
no, in 1543 or whatever it is.
Well, I think they claim they go back that far. I mean, that's sort of the new thing they're putting out there.
But what about Ezekiel, the wheel within the wheel, and it describes creatures? It doesn't say angels; it says creatures.
Yeah, it says creatures for sure.
And that one always fascinates me. There are instances in certain religious texts that you can correlate to being identified. I mean, everybody reads it and they interpret it the way they want to interpret it. But I see it as being a possible sighting, an experience that they're witnessing.
Yeah, I mean, everything about it screams a sighting, right? And the vocabulary. This is the problem. The vocabulary of someone living at this point. It was in Babylon, thousands of years ago. No technology. Not even the concept of electricity, trying to explain something like that using the language available to them. True. That's the problem. We still have this problem today. We're still in the same boat. We have a lot of technology. We have electricity. We have all this stuff. But we're still trying to explain something for which we have no words, right? And the closest we can come to is, well, it's a flying ship of some kind, and there are aliens and there are Greys and Nordics. These are projections, I think, onto something that we have no other way of explaining, and we're using the best terminology we can. Maybe 100 years from now, we won't be using flying saucer anymore. That'll be seen as quaint. They'll have another term for it because we'll have understood the science better or more differently, or we'll have a different context for it. So, yeah, going back and looking at the ancient texts is a trip because you're trying to see it through their eyes. So you look for consistency like we did for the first volume of Secret Machines. Let's look for consistency. What do they all agree on? All this comes from the sky, right? Exactly. It all comes from the heavens. That's one place to start. Okay, we go from there and we go from the beings. They're smarter than us. They created us. They're punishing us. All around the world, the same idea is repeated over and over again. And in the Hindu epics, in the Mahabharata, right? There's conflicts, there's wars taking place in the heavens, and all of this goes on and on and on. So we go there, and the idea is to extrapolate the common denominators. And the common denominators lead to the story that there was contact, and we're somehow the product of that contact, and our civilization is the product of that contact. So
interesting. I do sky watches. I've been doing it for numerous years, and I have top-of-the-line equipment. And 3 years ago, I live in the Hudson Valley near Pine Bush, New York. And this, this area was known, it was known for being a hotspot for UFO sightings. Now, I got an object that curves down, goes back upward, stops for a split second, has 3 lights on it. They illuminate before it takes off like warp speed back into space. Now, I am not saying this is an alien craft. I would never go out to that extreme. I just simply, categorize it as a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. But I will say this. I think a lot of people, when they see lights, they think it's strictly lights. I really believe that what I see is propulsion. It's a propulsion system. The lights. And one day I'll send you both the clip that I have. It was from 2014. And it's a really interesting clip. I've sent it to numerous people, and they come back with all kinds of opinions. There's a gentleman from Russia. He was their UFO researcher. His name is Valery Uvarov. He said that it was part of a top secret space program called the Terminator Project. Others, Wilbur Allen, a few others have said it's a UFO. But it's just interesting to see when you witness a craft like this, because, like you said, it's very hard to put it into. We still have difficulty trying to discern what it is, because, as Linda mentioned earlier, I believe there are portals. I believe they're opening up rifts into space, time and space, and they're able to go using a portal into another dimension.
Well, look at it this way. This is something that I've asked people. It's a kind of a mind experiment. What if what you're seeing is not just you, but I mean in general, what people are seeing when they see the crafts, doing these impossible maneuvers in the sky, these right-hand, these 90-degree turns at top speed and all the rest of it. What if we're not looking at a single craft flying in our space? If you're aware of Flatland, right? The book Flatland, and the concept that you could have two-dimensional creatures, right, living in a two-dimensional world, and a three-dimensional object goes into their world, they couldn't see it as three-dimensional because they have no 3 dimensions. They only have 2 dimensions. So it would appear to be many different things happening at once. It would not appear to be a single object.
Would it be like a shadow?
Not even a shadow, because something. You'd have to read Flatland to get the full impact of this, but they can't really look up because there's no up in 2 dimensions. But in their flat pencil world, there's a dot, right? And then the dot grows larger, and then the dot grows smaller. And that's really just a pencil going through the paper, right? But they don't see that. They just see this dot in 2 dimensions, which is the point of the pencil. And then the dot gets wider, and then the dot gets smaller and disappears. It looks like something has moved out and back, and it really hasn't. It's actually moved up and down. What if in our 3 dimensions, what we're seeing is something coming from another dimension in and out of our 3 dimensions, and it's only one big object that we think is moving really fast, but actually it's just one object moving in one direction, but it's in another dimension that we can't see the entire contour of. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to visualize.
But I interviewed a guy that I have no question, he was the real deal. It was at China Lake in California. Mm-hmm. And he was a photographer. And he was asked to go to a specific section of the base. He was told that there would be in that case it was a round craft. And his job was to photograph it from the outside, and then to ask, and that he would be ushered into this thing to take photographs on the inside. And so he said it was probably about 50 feet in diameter. And he took the photos on the outside, and they brought over one of those electrician's crane or ladder type things so that he could go up to where the side of this big craft just suddenly opened for him. They knew how to do this somehow. And so now he says, I stepped in thinking I'd be filming inside like I'd be filming inside of a house. Mm-hmm. And he said, as soon as I stepped in, I had no idea where I was. He said, I couldn't see the end. It was huge. And I started trying to move. They had told me I was to take photographs. He said, I tried taking photographs. I couldn't see the end. And I came back and I stepped out. And somebody saw that I stepped out and they said, what's wrong? And he said, I don't know what's wrong. He said, I'm trying to figure it out. And he stepped back in. He said he would step out and it would be our world. He would step in and that it was like infinite. What do you think, Peter, that is about? Because I've heard that before, but his was the only eyewitness I've ever heard from somebody who served in the military.
Well, it sounds just like what we've been discussing, a kind of gate or portal, right? That the machine is not really a machine the way we understand it. That it's a device that does something that we don't think machines are supposed to do. You know, that the machine may be a way for us to accommodate this portal in our heads, right, in our minds. There's this round object sitting there, so we're thinking of it in terms of a UFO, or we're thinking of it in terms of a machine, but it is, like we say, a secretion, right? It's this other dimensional, secretion into our world, so that we step into it and we see something completely different. If it was a question of a two-dimensional creature, if we had a flat sheet of paper and I start drawing all sorts of lines on that paper, the effect on someone living in the two dimensions might be the same, right? They may see an object that they think they go inside, and once they do, they see an infinite series. They see the three dimensions. They don't know how to describe it or how to handle it. I mean, it could be something as simple as that. He goes in through the door, and now he's no longer in our world. And that was the whole point. That was literally a portal, literally a gate, a stargate into this other dimension.
Wow. Wow.
That's what magic circles are supposed to be. This always comes back to me to the medieval practices of ceremonial magic, where you create circles, you draw these circles with sigils on the ground, and that's supposed to take you into this other dimension, right? Where you're able to converse with beings from other realities. I mean, that was the whole purpose of that. I mean, there was this instinctual understanding. And in India and in Tibet, the idea of creating mandalas is the same purpose. You create this mandala, you create basically a portal. You have elaborate designs for it. And then once you have it all set up and once it's there, you have to destroy it. You can't leave it there because something terrible might happen, I mean, it's part of the same. We have this around the world, this instinctual understanding that this is possible. Well, it's Twin Peaks. It's the lodge in Twin Peaks. It's the lodge in the middle of the sycamore trees. I mean, that's it.
And Peter, I've done a lot of transcendental meditation, and I've had the experience of leaving my body and going up. But what do you think when you look at a mandala? What do you think it is supposed to do?
Well, it's a machine, just like everything else. And I've mentioned this in some of the other books. I think I mentioned it in book 1, but probably later on I get into more detail. These mandalas are machines. They're intended to be machines, right? They're mechanisms. Otherwise, there would be no purpose. It's just a piece of art you would hang on the wall. But they don't do that. These are living things that they create painstakingly, with a lot of prayers and a lot of chanting, the way Russian icons are made as well. You just can't paint an icon. You have to be spiritually prepared to do it. The materials you use have to be spiritually prepared. All of this goes into creating the icon. It's the same with the mandala. It is a spiritual machine. It generates a certain amount of force, and it opens a hole. It's a mirror that you can see into. Instead of seeing your own reflection, you're seeing something else. It's like the mirror in what's his name? Oh my God, tip of my tongue. The famous surrealist film.
The Scream, or the Dorian Gray, or
no, the French one, Orpheus, right?
Oh, yeah, Orpheus Rising.
Yeah, where they go into the mirror and they go out the other side. It's a bit like that. And that's what a mandala does. It centers you in the first place because that's its primary function, is to balance all the elements in your being. But once they're balanced, you're drawn into the center of the mandala. But they have to be balanced first. If you're imbalanced, you're kind of not going to come out the way you went in. So what you want is to be perfectly balanced in all of your elements, your fire, earth, air, and water, north, south, east, and west, however you describe it. And then you're drawn into the center, which is the realm, the seat of the throne of the god. And that's where you're supposed to go.
Oh, I just got to throw something in there, though, because what about using the higher consciousness through a metaphysical aspect where whether through meditation or lucid dreaming, where you can connect with a divine guide or a higher sentient being? Because I hear a lot of and I've actually interviewed people myself about that there's some type of a grid system that it goes throughout the universe where you can make contact with other extraterrestrial beings or, like I said, divinity or some other sources out there.
Well, that was the whole basis of the Golden Dawn magical system, right? I mean, there were different levels on the Tree of Life, and each level had its own divinities attached to it, its own positive and negative forces attached to it, its own material qualities and everything else. And the process of initiation would lead you through that grid to the point where you reached this sort of impassable area where you had to cross it, even though it looked infinite. And that's the abyss. And once you cross the abyss, if you're pure of heart, you wind up on the other side, and there's an additional grid that you have to go through, but it's not quite as extensive as the first one. This is understood. This is the initiatory process, the 7 stages of Inanna going into the underworld, and then the 7 stages coming back out. It's the initiatory process. It's that grid. You lose something every step of the way when you start the procedure, and then you gain it back on the back half of the procedure. That Inanna taught us that in the Descent to the Underworld, and the Golden Dawn in the 19th century taught us that with their initiatory rituals, and the Mithra, the rites of Mithra are the same, again 7 stages. It's repeated constantly as the magic number of initiation, and it's pretty standard in almost every, I think, religious and occult tradition I've studied worldwide.
Now, I'm sorry, Linda, just one more thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw something in here.
Okay, sure.
That psychologist that I told you about who had the sigil numbers,
yeah,
he's had a book. He showed it to me. It was called The Golden Ring, and it was about the golden. There were psychics who were getting together in Europe. I don't know how getting together, but doing some sort of rings town by town and communicating with each other somehow. And that on the Hitler, if I understood correctly, the German problem was that they ran out of ball bearings, if you boiled
Yes.
it all down.
Right.
And that the Golden Ring book is about the night before the collapse because of the lack of ball bearings. The Golden Ring had reached its largest size in number of people that were concentrating on defeating Hitler. And that the Golden Ring, I don't know if there was an association with the Golden Dawn. I've never been able to find that book. I saw it, I read it in Mario Pazzaglini's, he had a library in his house. And I don't know what happened. I can't find that book, but that's what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, have you ever heard of anything about the Golden Ring concentrating on defeating Hitler and that the ball bearings ran out the next day?
No, I mean, that's news to me, except I've heard about a lot of similar things being done against Hitler, for various reasons. I mean, the famous witchcraft covens that were meeting in the south of England, for instance, and Sybil Leek once mentioned that. The New Forest witches that were, trying to cause Hitler's downfall. They say that they were descendants of the ones who had caused the storms to raise against the Spanish Armada when they came to attack England, right? The story was that the storm was, not on the horizon at all until this occult ceremony took place to raise the storm to destroy the Armada. Because the British Navy would not have been able to do it unassisted. So I've heard things like that a lot. So it wouldn't surprise me there would be a book like that. But I've never heard of the Golden Ring. I've never heard of this at all. About the ball bearings, yes, that's absolutely true. The ball bearings was critical. They were getting them from Sweden, and then something went wrong, and they didn't have them, and the rest is history.
And those were the tall, blonde, blue-eyed.
Yeah.
The Vril. Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm wondering also, is there any validity to the Die Glock, the Nazi bell, and is there any correlation to the Kecksburg incident
Yeah, we're covering all the bases here, huh?
Well, we're talking about the Nazi era, so
Yeah,
the
there you go.
You know.
Well, yeah, Die Glocke. Well, yeah, Joseph Farrell, of course, is the expert on this aspect of it, and I wouldn't dare presume to tread on his toes where this is concerned. But, I've been looking at this thing. I've just been fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by Kammler, about the Germans, the move from Peenemünde to Nordhausen in the Alps, how they dug the holes in the caves and all the rest of it. None of it seems believable to me. I mean, I know what happened as far as the Nazis, moving Peenemünde after the attack on Peenemünde, moving that whole operation into caverns they blasted out of the rock in like a matter of weeks, and they built this elaborate system for testing all of this. The guy in charge of that was Kammler, General Kammler. He was allegedly also in charge of the bell, of the Nazi bell, Die Glocke. It's true what Farrell says about Kammler. The guy disappeared. We don't know why. He was actually in charge of von Braun and Dornberger and all those guys from Peenemünde. He was getting ready to take them out of the war zone and down to the National Redoubt, which was in Austria near Salzburg. All of this was supposedly taking place, and then Kammler ups and disappears. And we don't know exactly why, but it had something to do with the operations in Czechoslovakia, outside of Prague, which supposedly was where some of the Bell technology was being developed. We don't know what they were doing there specifically. I've seen some of the documents from there that were captured by the Allies. I have some of them here because I was researching that for the Secret Machines project, and they're very ambiguous as to what was taking place in the Czech Republic and Czechoslovakia at that time. But they're all pretty much unanimous that Kammler disappeared. Farrell is of the belief that Kammler disappeared into South America, and that a prototype of the Bell was built in South America, and that the thing that crashed, of course, as you know, in Kecksburg was the Bell, or was some prototype that was being transported, or it was the Bell itself that was flying all over the place. But however you want to look at it, there's a connection between Kecksburg and the Bell. I don't know, because again, I'm pretty much a documents and sources kind of guy. I need to see some connective tissue before I come out and say definitively one way or the other. But were the Nazis involved in developing alternate energy sources like the Bell would have been? Yeah, for sure. Is that site in Germany they photographed that says it was the scaffolding for the Bell really for the Bell? I don't think so. I think that it's been kind of debunked because there's other installations like that which were built for some, oil company or electric company or something. It's been kind of debunked, but at the same time, I'm not 100% secure with that debunking. I think that's even a little questionable too. So I can't come down one side or the other of those particular photographs and all of that stuff about the Bell.
And there's also the trail of the mercury all that mercury that was being shipped to the Antarctic base.
Well, yeah. What I want to say is that the one thing that nobody expected, which has since proven to be true, are the massive network of underground tunnels that were built not just around Nordhausen in Germany, but also in the Austrian Alps, and the fact that they keep coming across more tunnels that were beautifully built and designed, which were evidently, according to the official story, built for testing Messerschmitt jet engines. And stuff of that nature, but they were definitely aeronautical. They were definitely weapons of mass destruction oriented, and they keep finding more of these tunnels, at least where they least expect to find them. And they've come across another tunnel the last year or so, which they claim may still hold, a freight car full of captured Nazi gold in a tunnel which has been bombed over and shut up with explosives, and now everybody's a little nervous to open the thing and go in there because the entire thing may collapse. So they keep finding more of these tunnels in Austria and in Germany and in parts of Poland and Czechoslovakia where the Nazis had testing facilities. So the jury's out for me. It's possible that there is more to be found and that those tunnels don't really explain everything, because how Kammler was able to build such an extensive network of tunnels in the few weeks and months he had to him.
He did it with ET help.
Well, he did it. He either did it that way, or that thing was in construction long before for some other reason, right?
Well, what do you think about the Aldebaran or Aldebaran connection?
I don't have a theory on that at all. I'm empty on that. I know it sounds weird to be empty, but I'm empty. When it comes to Aldebaran and all of the associations with various of the star clusters and stuff, I just sit there and I stare dumbfounded and look stupid. That's my response. I don't know.
I wonder where it came from. I mean, I know the blondes, the beautiful blonde, blue-eyed girls, and this idea that Pienemundi had some sort of a link underground to some sort of an alien production center, which may or may not be linked to some of these tunnels, but that why, of all of the places where Pleiades has been so common in literature, why Aldebaran in Hitler's time?
Well, he wanted to be different. I think there's another aspect to this, and I think we could be distracted by Peenemünde. I think that Peenemünde is not the answer here for a particular reason, and that is that the Swedish rocket, ghost rocket phenomenon that happened after the war was over was initially thought to have something to do with Peenemünde, but it wasn't. It was a bit further out from Peenemünde in what is now, I believe it's now Russian territory. Peenemünde might have been a blind where this is concerned, because Peenemünde, we pretty much know what was there. We know what capabilities they had. They used slave labor from the camps. So we have pretty good idea of their capacities in terms of personnel and all the rest of it. And when the British bombed it, I believe it was Operation Crossbow, when they went and they bombed Peenemünde, they had to move out of there. If they had a strong ET presence and they had like a lot of other stuff going on at Peenemünde, they would have never have abandoned that facility, right? They would have moved up a whole bunch of howitzers and whatever and protected it better than they had. But they dropped it, and they moved right away to the Alps and to Austria with all of that equipment and personnel. So I think Peenemünde may be a distraction. I think that the ghost rocket phenomenon did not originate from there, but originated from some other site. And I think that's where your Aldebaran connection probably comes from. It may not be from there. Peenemünde may be just attracting all the attention because we know it was there. But I think there was another facility, and it might not have been a German facility at all. It might have been Russian. It might have been Slavic. It might have been Scandinavian. But it may not have been a German rocket facility. And that might have been part of the problem, that we're trying to fix everything on Peenemünde, which is not. It might have been something else. It might have had nothing to do with the war, at all. So that might be your ET explanation. Because the ghost rockets disturbs me. It's something that doesn't fit with everything else, and yet it's a fact. It's there.
Right.
But what I've read about the ghost rockets, and even our own personnel going to visit, the authorities in Stockholm and places like that to ask specifically about it, means that we were concerned about it as well. And maybe it was Foo Fighters, maybe it was connected to that, thing or not. But we got distracted right away because of Roswell. And we sort of forgot all about the Foo Fighters. We forgot about the ghost rockets. And I think that might have been a mistake. There might be a lot more to look at there, especially as Foo Fighters were seen in the Pacific Theater. That doesn't make any sense. That means they were not German weapons like they initially thought they might have been. It means there was something more global in that respect. So I think that more care should have been taken to look at that, and we just didn't. We got distracted by other things.
Yeah, and the DIA guy said that the Foo Fighters were extraterrestrial monitors of the Earth in that war time, just like we would have drones today. Yeah. Remote-controlled eyes, ears of the planet at that crucial time. But whose? That's the issue.
Sure.
There's also Stan Gordon and I did a lot of work on Kecksburg, and I interviewed a truck driver who was taking a load of brick to Wright-Patterson, and he is told to dump the brick outside of something that was like a hangar, and I can't remember exactly why, but he had to use the bathroom or do something. I can't remember. And he entered into or close to where this hangar door was open, where they had dumped the bricks. And he could see that there was a white sheet and an arm was hanging out of the white sheet. And it had 3 or 4 long clawed fingers, and the skin was like an alligator. Wow. And I talked with him. I had this audio, and so does Stan Gordon. And if that was a reptilian, and he was listening to the radio traffic that was going between Kecksburg. He was a truck driver in that Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. And he heard radio traffic related to the object coming down, the military, his getting the order to take this load of bricks to Wright-Patterson, and saw this reptilian under the sheet.
Wow. Cool.
So is that? Are you saying that it's related to the Kecksburg, the acorn?
That was Keck. It was. He had got the order to take the bricks 24 hours in the next 24 hours after the Kecksburg event.
Wow. So it was occupied. This was the occupants of that acorn-like shaped object. Is that what?
Well, in deference to my dear colleague, I can't prove that the reptilian in that hangar where he delivered the bricks was in the Kecksburg craft.
Okay.
But the synaptic leap was that he was hearing all that radio traffic about this object coming down, and then gets this order to go pick up all these bricks and to go to Wright-Patterson. And then there is this creature under the sheets. And that's why he talked to me and to Stan Gordon that maybe this is a creature that came out of that Kecksburg craft.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And if so, it would mean if it was a bell or whatever it was, it was occupied by reptilian.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I never heard that.
Which would mean it wasn't the bell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
if we interpret the bell as the Nazi craft, right?
Yeah, if they're supposed to be blondes, this shape shifting or the cross where my enemy, I extend and create my enemy that I occupy, and that the reptilians and the blondes have done this through millennia, being able to create the containers that they wanted to be in to influence humans in this planet, and that often the blonde bodies were controlled by reptilians and reptilian bodies were controlled by blondes is another one of the sub-themes.
Right.
Interesting.
Making it all very, very, very
confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also part of all the disinfo, because I have to be honest, there's stuff that comes out and I'm always speculative about what the information that's coming out. Like Linda, with the recent documents that was released a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, the one that I did, I was so grateful that Peter Thomas, who had spent 26 years in the Navy, was provoked enough to first email me, and then we talked on the phone, and he was giving, Peter, I can't remember if we talked about this, he worked in a section of the Navy for 26 years in which he had to go to a book also classified within the Navy having to do with how you handled confidential, secret, top secret, and all the different categories and iterations. And so he knows documents inside out. And he got in touch with me about 48 hours after that document surfaced at Heather Wade and Art Bell, and gave all of the concise, intelligent reasons why it was a complete fraud. And then I did an interview with him that I had on Coast and have done at Earth Files. And it was very educational because he was saying, here's what every document must have. There is no such thing as ultra top secret, that you would never have words saying confidential eyes only above the top of a page, it wouldn't exist. And he went through all of it, leaving the question, who went to the trouble to create a 47-page document, get it to Heather Wade and Art Bell, who contacted Stanton Friedman, Whitley Strieber, and me, and we discussed this document on the air, and fortunately this Peter Thomas came forward, and I think there's content, some of the content I think is actually real, but the whole thing was put together as the Navy guy said, it's the shoddiest, most ridiculous fraud because it didn't even try to live up to the rules that would be on a document like that.
Okay, before you guys go on, I just want to give you an example on something I saw on the news last night. About a month and a half ago, actually a month ago, there was a top secret NSA document that was being leaked to the media. Now, if you remember that, I think her name was Winter or someone that got... okay.
Yeah.
Now, I saw another news agency received a similar document, but...
Rachel Maddow.
You saw that, right?
I saw it.
Yeah, I watch her. She is brilliant.
Okay.
And
now
the fact that they were able to flag the dots, the dots that were in the scanner, and that in comparison, it looked like it was a pasted job, more sophisticated, phony document, but it meant that somebody was trying to deep six the credibility of somebody like Rachel Maddow.
Exactly. Now think about that in the terms in the ufology field. That's what I think. I think that document that was sent out was almost in the same intent of everybody running with it and being misled and fooled and coming out and putting another, I want to say loosely, a black eye on the whole ufology field. Similar to almost, and I hate to use this as an example also, but what happened with the mummy artifact that happened a couple of years ago.
Well, and that's why I'm so grateful to Peter Thomas, who is the real deal. I asked him to send me his DD-214. He did. I asked him to send credentials that he had. He is who he says he can show a Navy history. And the fact that he then very meticulously took that document apart, and I could put it on Coast to Coast and at Earth Files. It was a reality check within 48 hours.
And I think we might be getting close. God, I'm sorry, Peter.
There was just to bring up something apropos of that. You think back to yourself and you think, who benefits from creating a 47-page document that's fraudulent and then just dump it on the UFO? Isn't that a small target? I mean, I can understand going after Rachel Maddow and destroying her credibility because they're all targeting her, right? Yeah, everybody, I mean, is out to get her. So she has to be very careful. Her people have to be very careful. But when you're sending that to the UFO community, hasn't the UFO community been taking so many shots that, it's just not fair anymore to do that? But besides that, today, I understand that the governor of the state of Maine gave a talk in which he said that he deliberately plants false stories with news reporters because he hates the print media and he hopes they will all just disappear. So he plants false stories just to destroy their credibility. He came out and said that, and it's been covered now in the press. The guy comes out and says, this is what I do. And that's the governor of a state.
Wow.
Oh, my Lord. No, I did not know that, but it's Trumpism. It's Trumpism taking over like a toxic weed.
Yeah, he's the Republican governor of Maine, right.
But
he's part of
I also think it's possible that there may be information coming down the pipeline, maybe from a whistleblower or to some other source, and they're throwing this out there, and something else might be coming. Say, oh, this is another thing that's just a bunch of BS. Something might be coming down the pipeline. We're just not aware of it yet.
Well, often counter intel operations, you will get I call it the snowstorm. You get a snowstorm of all kinds of mixed signals because something real that either they can't control it or it's planned to come after the snowstorm, so that they have more of a noose over the we'll call it the real material, depending upon the impact. It's counterintelligence got us through World War II, and they are brilliant minds, and they are still operative. Isn't that true, Peter? I mean, counter-intel are usually some of the brightest people going.
Oh yeah, they have to be, because they have to think like Intel, and they have to think like the enemy. My problem with it is why? Who benefits from this? Who benefits from all the work that goes into that document that was, landed on everybody just a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
What was the benefit? Why go and attack the UFO community with that degree of, well, it wasn't really that sophisticated, but it was a lot of work, right? I mean, if you look at the Majestic 12 documents, the same thing, right? If those are a hoax, there was a hell of a lot of work went into that hoax.
Oh, I don't think the MJ12 documents are, but I am sure grateful that Peter Thomas was following Earth Files, got a hold of me, because I keep thinking if I hadn't done that report with him, it was within 36 hours, I believe, is when he got a hold of me, and I talked with him, and he sent me the stuff showing me that he was who he said and why, that he's not throwing out UFOs and ETs at all. My reported Earth Files was his talking about from inside in unofficial capacities that he's completely aware that there's an alien presence in UFOs. He was concerned that anybody would put out a document that was that crazy, and there might be real content in it, and that's why he came forward.
Sure, no, I get it. But still, this question still remains: who would do that and why? What benefit is it? Just like, is it worth it? I mean, if you're going to drop a hoax on somebody, make it a couple of pages, right? I mean, that should be enough,
Yeah, 47.
47 seems like a little bit of overkill for something that's going to be so transparently a hoax, right, by somebody who's been on the inside. Why do that? And, what's the purpose behind it? If we knew the purpose, we might be able to figure out who did it. Or if we knew who did it, we could figure out the purpose. The problem is we don't have either one. Well, yeah.
They'd be in jail with this current state.
Well,
and as for the Majestic documents, right? I met Stanton Friedman a couple of years ago, just in passing, and I said, look, I've done a lot of work in the National Archives, among captured German documents and among official American documents, and I've got thousands of them here. They look pretty good to me. I mean, you'd have a hard time proving they were fake where I was concerned. So my point was not that they're a hoax document, but if they were hoaxed, who the hell would go to the trouble to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And one of the most cynical, I do not know, and maybe it's wrong to even bring it up, but one of the most cynical insights was that Art Bell and Heather Wade did this to increase their ratings.
Yeah. They said that they knew the source for, 2 years? And it was... That's what I heard. I heard that it was she knew the source for 2 years.
Yeah, and if I had two sources that handed me a document like that, and that I learned that they were trying to fuck somebody over, I would just be enraged. And Heather and Art Bell, to me, they just went completely silent after I did that report with Peter Thomas.
Well, so you think they were caught in the act then?
Well, it
looks that way, right?
It's not provable, but it is so. The whole thing is kind of clumsy.
Yeah, I was going to say, you would think it would be vetted by people with credentials to go over it first before making an announcement of these documents.
Especially as to what's gone on before,
Exactly.
And when Heather, the office, Art Bell Heather, called me and they sent me the document, and they said, their opening line to me was, we sent these to Stanton Friedman, and he says he's never seen anything like it. It has important information. It did, if any of it were true, on Aztec. That was the most interesting part. So they front-loaded in their first call to me that Stanton had seen the document, and I hadn't even seen it yet. that
Right.
Stanton had seen the document and that he was basically, they were making it sound like he was raving about it. And that seems to me, looking back, that was really over the top, unfair, and manipulative right from the get-go.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So thank Peter Thomas from the Navy for coming forward and giving us an education about documents that he had lived with his entire life, and knows all of this formatting that the Navy will do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really important.
You know what I find so frustrating is that if you were to go into court with all the circumstantial evidence, with all the witness testimony, just on the basis of asking the question, does the ET hypothesis existence, is it real? And I've seen cases where people are convicted on less, or cases won on less than all the evidence that's out there.
Sure.
And it's so frustrating that it's just not put up to congressional leaders to go and bring this up to some kind of a hearing with all the testimony that's out there. And that's what really frustrates me.
But the military DOD, going back, I think, to FDR and George Marshall, they made a decision of policy of denial, and the evolution, the passing of the baton, and especially when you realize FDR and Cordell Hull and George Marshall and Harry S. Truman and that group, they were all 33rd degree Masons. And the 33rd degree Masonry has always prided themselves on their secrecy. And so to have something like this occur at that particular juncture in time, I don't know, Peter, what your perspective would be, but I know that I've been very intrigued to learn that those people, FDR through Truman, they were the ones that were in positions related to the Department of Defense, the executive branch, and Truman was the Democrat who was connected to the budgeting of monies for the War Office. And they were all 33rd degree Masons. And according to Paul Blake Smith's research in Cape Girardeau, where he lives, that when that craft with those three clone bodies was found on April 12th, 1941, according to his source, that Sikeston, Missouri, was the location for the Missouri Aeronautics Institute, and that there have been at least implications that Sikeston is the military that were asked to go retrieve the bodies, that they were photographed in the retrieval by some photographer, and that they were flown, and that's the question, were they flown to Wright Field and then on to Washington, D.C., because the FDR decision would have been that the safest building in the United States for something like that was the Capitol, because there was no Area 51, there was no China Lake, there was none of the things that we think of today, but there was the nation's capital built on Masonic principles, and that FDR and his Masonic colleagues would have thought that the safest place to store something like extraterrestrials from outer space would be in the nation's capital, under the ground. And I was able to find, in 1911, the Interior Department had information about the completion of the Capitol, I think in 1907, and it talks about sub-basements.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's not on public record, so.
Well, the Interior Department, talking about sub-basements, I've been able to find on the web.
Wow.
What it doesn't say is that there are craft and extraterrestrials stored in a sub-basement, but
well, I've got an idea for your next hoax. Get some floor plans and kind of draw a saucer in there and send it to Art Bell.
I don't think all the obvious places are where they're locating these bodies or craft. I mean, we hear so much about the familiar ones, but you know what? I think there's an interest of mine in Dugway. I don't know if something's going on in Utah, but I don't think it's going to be where we all think it is. It's going to be somewhere where we're probably not even expecting it to be. You know,
It's all over the planet.
Yeah.
We have underground stuff all over. We built buildings on the surface without windows to cover up craft that we could not move. We have, I think Norton Air Force Base is a underground museum of certain types of beings and craft. Eglin is where Jackie Gleason was taken by Nixon, and that really did happen. And that was described to me by a guy who worked in the CIA and retired and knew knew Gleason, and said it really did happen, and that the underground at Eglin in Florida, that where Nixon took Gleason, they had 3 or 4 different types, and he did not even try to say which. He said, I know that he described vertical tubes mounted on walls with liquid in them, and that there were various ETs, but he didn't know which type, and that there were 3 or 4 rooms that had different craft.
Wow. Well,
I don't know, Peter, have you heard any of this about what they're called Norton and Eglin and Area 51, like museums of bodies in tubes and craft?
No, this is all pretty new to me. No one's mentioned this to me anyway. I mean, I've heard rumors similar to that about, underground facilities where they have this sort of thing, but I don't think Eglin or Norton has ever been mentioned in connection with that.
Hynek, J. Allen Hynek told me the Norton story face to face. It was August of 1985. He did not know at the time that he had a brain tumor.
Right.
He called me, and Richard Sigismund was a really good friend of his in Boulder, and asked me to go to dinner. And the 3 of us were hearing the 2 of us were hearing Hynek talk about how he had come from a trip to Norton Air Force Base, where he had gotten a call that they were going to show him the bodies and the craft of extraterrestrials. He gets to Norton, excited. He said he waited his entire life for this moment. And 2 men in uniform came to where he was waiting and said, "We're sorry, Professor Hynek, the permission has been withdrawn." And as he was telling Sigismund and me this in Denver, Colorado, in August of 1985, he was there at Norton, I think 3 or 4 weeks before, his eyes teared up. And I was sitting in between him and Sigismund. And so he put his hands on my right arm. I'll never forget it. And he put both hands on my right arm, and with tears in his eyes, he said, "Linda, do you think I will ever be vindicated in my life?" And what he meant was they had flown him to Norton Air Force Base, where he was to see different bodies and craft. And then, for whatever reason, it was rescinded. He's now with us. And he was so close to death, but none of us knew, because he was diagnosed. I took off for Africa. I was in Ethiopia and Addis Ababa. I left the next day. That's why it's pinned in my mind that I had dinner with Hynek and Sigismund, and then I took off the next day for Africa. And I was gone for a month, and I didn't know that he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And then in April, so what is that? August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. 9 months later, he was dead. Wow. And it was a brain tumor, which people with spreading prostate cancer, it often ends up in the brain and in the bone marrow. And when I think back about that, at that moment in that table, seeing that man's eyes filled with tears and grabbing a hold of my right arm, Linda, do you think I will be vindicated in my lifetime? But he knew. I'm reinforcing, J.L. and Hynek knew there were real non-human bodies and real craft, and other people have seen them in these underground installations. The question is why? Why did they deny, get him all the way to Norton, and then rescind? Why did they do that? Mm-hmm. That's what he was asking too. But it was so personal for me because of his emotional reaction to being denied.
Right. Yeah, you would think of all the people who'd be allowed to see that would be him, the guy who invented the close encounter.
That's right.
I mean, someone who started as a skeptic and who wound up as a believer. You would think somebody would have bent the rule a little bit and let him see it.
Well, he definitely was convinced, because in that later period of time in the 80s. I was with him. You'd find this really interesting, Peter. Hynek and I were speakers at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. I'm pretty sure that's where we were. And it was Linda talking about animal mutilations, Hynek talking about sort of his evolution in the whole issue from an astronomer to trying to get to the bottom of what intelligence is in the UFOs. And the third was a cryptozoologist who had been to Lake Tile in Africa. And so he was reporting about research of possible dinosaur legacies, and Hynek and me. And afterwards, Hynek asked me to go to dinner, and we were talking mostly about UFOs, and he said, after dinner, he said, why don't we let our hair down? And I thought, oh, God, I'm going to hear all of the truth. And so we went off to a room away from all the conference buzz. And the first thing he said to me, the most important book I've ever read in my life, I hope you will read, because it is at the key of what we're dealing with. And he said, it's Theosophy by Rudolf Steiner. Yeah, that's Peter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I thought, I was an English literature major and then a Stanford University communications person, and I took courses at Stanford from historians and anthropology and archaeology. I do not know how that happens, that you can have an advanced education, and I never, ever had heard about Theosophy and Rudolf Steiner. And so he continued to talk with me about souls and recycling that night, and we've hardly talked anything about animal mutilations or UFOs or ETs. It was like Hynek going into his personal, I guess, private relationship with the universe, and that he was basically sharing and saying, this is the key. So when I went home and immediately got the book. And when I found myself in the presence of somebody trying to describe the architecture of the relationship of the soul to the body container to the divine in these stages, I've always wondered, where did that epiphany come for Alan Hynek?
Mm-hmm.
But it ties in, Peter, to you're talking about the tantra and the effort of humans to, or being taught or manipulated into trying to reach across into another dimension.
Yeah. I think if you reread the press conference the Air Force had in July of 52, after the overflights in D.C., when all the guys, including the Ramey, who was there at Roswell, and everybody else 5 years earlier, he's out there in D.C., and they're giving this press conference. And I've been fascinated by it, and I write about it a lot, I think, in book 2 or book 3 of this thing. I forgot where I am in all of that. But anyway, I deconstruct what this guy says. And he's being asked about UFOs, the general General Sanford, who's giving this talk to the reporters, the regular press conference. And he starts talking about the Bible. And he starts talking about spiritual stuff. And he's making the connection there between the phenomenon and spirituality. He's an Air Force general in 1952, right? And he's talking to the press in something that he knows is going to be copied down and, repeated later. And he makes at least 2 or 3 references to biblical concepts and to the Bible in general.
Right.
And he's connecting the Bible to the UFO phenomenon and to supernatural things. This guy is on point where that's concerned. He's not talking about ships in the sky. He's not talking about, hard actual machines and technology. This guy is talking about mysticism, and he's an Air Force general.
And don't you think it is because between FDR and then Truman and then Eisenhower that they were beginning to catch on that we were literally dealing with Jehovah, Enlil, Enki, Zeus, that the ancient mythology was not mythology, that our ancient past was the terraforming by other intelligences in this universe using this solar system?
Well, I'll agree with you to the point where you say that it wasn't mythology. For sure, I think they understood by that point it wasn't mythology. Not the way we understand mythology. It wasn't lies, dressed up. This was something completely different. Whether it went to the extent of terraforming, I don't know if they ever got that far. But I can tell you that we have been told, Tom and I have been told, when we start asking, we start pressing in these directions. We're always told, I think by 2 or 3 different people now, look at Greek mythology.
Right.
They always get back to Greek mythology, and we're told that by people who had, stars on their shoulders. And they said, it's Greek. Look at Greek mythology. Are you familiar with Greek mythology? We'll always get that kind of Greek mythology reference.
Right.
And that's why in book 1 I had to talk about Greek mythology. I wasn't going to, but I had to, because they kept saying, look at Greek mythology. And it's because they know that the mythology is truth wrapped up in a vocabulary which is the only vocabulary that was available at the time. They're talking to us about something real, about conflict, about something from the stars. I mean, it's there.
And they warred. And dear Peter, what did the Titans and Zeus really fight about? I asked Eric von Daniken, and he said, it's really not understood. Do you have any insights? What was supposed to be the reason for Zeus and the Titans fighting?
I think they were fighting over us.
Prometheus wanted to give fire to humanity.
He wanted to make us independent. This was really what it comes down to. It reminds me of that scene. Believe it or not, it must be getting late because I'm tripping. Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia.
I love you. This is the most wonderful discussion. Thank you for staying on.
There's a scene in Lawrence of Arabia. Believe me, this is relevant. I'm a big fan of Lawrence of Arabia. I belong to the T.E. Lawrence Society. I'm a sucker for Lawrence of Arabia for a lot of reasons. I won't go into
one of the greatest films of all time.
Of all time. And there's that famous scene where Lawrence is asking for guns. He's asking for gold. They don't trust paper. They want gold. Okay, Allenby is saying, okay, you got it, you got it, you got it. And then he says, howitzers, we need cannons, we need artillery. And Allenby says, okay. And then Lawrence walks away. He's happy. But then Claude Rains says to Allenby, you don't really want to give them artillery because that would make them independent.
Oh, I see.
And Allenby says, yeah, I guess you're right. Okay, no artillery then. The same thing. Prometheus was going to give us artillery, basically, and we'd be independent. We wouldn't have to depend. We wouldn't feel that we were slaves any longer if we had guns ourselves, right? If we had fire, whatever it was a metaphor for, but if we had it, then the gods freaked out, and that's why they chained Prometheus to a rock and the whole 9 yards. So why have we named virtually everything in our space program after Greek gods?
I know. I asked a guy that about 15 years ago, and he said something exactly like what you're talking about now. He said, because the Greek gods were not gods, they were ETs, and he said it with anger.
Right. Well,
I wasn't sure what the anger was about, but that literally happened, what I just said to you.
I believe it. We're getting the same feedback from our people, and this is 2016, 2017 now, and we're still getting that story.
And you've probably been in Athens to it's the museum where as you come up the steps, you come up and then you're up above, and then the museum goes down below you somehow. And I think it's Prometheus is like 20 or 30 feet from where you come in the door. And it has those yellow, I don't know what it's made out of, but they're the yellow Greek eyes. And you can see and stare. It is as if this is a live being. And you know that these were intelligent minds, beings, obviously, but the yellow eyes, Greeks are the only ones who ever had yellow eyes on Earth.
That's interesting.
It's true. And another incredible genetic point, you can Google this. There was no genes for blue eyes until 8,500 years ago. And and blonde hair. The haploid in the genome sequencing now is supposed to say that there was no gene for blonde hair prior to, I think it's 11,000, 12,000 years ago. So it came blonde hair and then the blue eyes. Somehow genetically, you can Google and read about this. And that is so peculiar because that would mean that the blue-eye blondes were the last genetic tweak, at least of what we have access to in genomes.
Well, I'm still tripping, but the yellow eyes thing, okay, yellow eyes is always an indication of jaundice, which is a liver diseise.
No, iris. It's the iris. Think of a healthy white. The whites of the eye are perfect white.
I understand. Yellow is jaundice. It's a liver condition, and Prometheus had his liver taken out because he gave fire to the people. Do you see where I'm getting at?
Yeah,
It's a little bizarre, but anyway. That's why they call it tripping.
Well, my dad's only sister, married a full-blood Greek. And so I had a cousin, their daughter, who, when we were kids growing up, I mean, you could not take your eyes off of her because her eyes were yellow. Her father, the Greek, had yellow eyes, but not as intense as my cousin's. And her yellow eyes, I've never forgotten, olive skin and really yellow eyes. And it is so compelling. And that is exactly the way Prometheus, I think it's Prometheus, it might be Zeus, but I'm thinking it was Prometheus, has this gorgeous marble statue with the yellow eyes in that museum in Athens.
Interesting.
And who were they in relationship to Enlil Enki?
Well, isn't this just the iteration of the same event? Passed down and passed down. In anthropology, there's a truism that the myth doesn't appear first. The event happens first, and then the myth is developed to explain it. And this is something I keep trying to tell people who talk about mythology. It's all mythology, and you can't trust mythology. Mythology is designed to explain something that happened. First, there's an event, and I said this we had a thing in San Diego, I think it was the beginning of the year or so, to the Secret Machines crowd. And I said, first there's the event, then there's the myth. Myths are created to explain events in language that's available at the time. And it's possible that we have the same stories around the world with some of the same elements because it refers either to one massive event, one big event that happened simultaneously, or it's just the way contact is. It's an ongoing process and everybody has the same experience, right? Or they're handling it the same way, processing it the same way with a lot of the same images. If that's true, then we go to the next step. Was there one event, but it was experienced by everyone on the planet at the same time, which physically would be impossible, but which in terms of consciousness might have been very possible? Do you see what I'm getting at?
I do. I see what you're getting at. But have you read Chris Hardy's Wars of the Anunnaki?
No.
It's nuclear destruction in ancient self-destruction. Ancient nuclear self-destruction in ancient Sumer is the subtitle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know about it, but I haven't read it.
I'd be so curious what your reaction. She clearly is a bookend to John Brandenburg's Death on Mars. He's the nuclear physicist. Have you ever talked with John?
I haven't talked with him, no, but I'm familiar with some of the work.
Well, he did get his PhD from UC Berkeley, and he tells the story of what provoked him to start investigating and trying to get Viking data on Mars. That he was in a library at UC Berkeley, and it was off limits to the public, and that he was in a line to use a copy machine, and right behind him was one of the managers in this division at UC Berkeley. And John said, I had data, and what I thought it was adding up to from Viking is a lot of Xenon 129, and I associated that with atomic bombs on Earth. And
right.
I was very uncertain and feeling, he said, I actually was scared to ask anybody anything. And he said, but I was waiting in that line, and so I took whatever this was that he was going to Xerox, and I showed it to the man that I vaguely knew and knew he had seniority there at UC Berkeley. And he said, have you ever seen this? And he said the professor looked at it for a couple of minutes and handed it back and said, yeah, we know there was hydrogen warfare on Mars. And then John said, the man seemed to realize what he was saying, maybe he shouldn't have said, is the feeling John had, and the man left the line like I've said too much or something. That one experience is what John Brandenburg said sent him off to do all these studies, and then found that the Viking data combined with Mach and various things later, that there is 2.5 times more Xenon 129 in the Mars atmosphere than on Earth. And that means Xenon 129 is supposed to come from only one way, fission of atoms. And that 2.5 times that amount on Mars, combined with, according to John, that they have discovered trinitite in that Cydonia region, and on Earth, trinitite is only supposed to be from the fusion of silicon sand by high heat.
Right.
And that's where that book is about 2 hydrogen atmospheric bombs, because according to John, if you back up from the data, it makes more sense if they were atmospheric explosions at the hydrogen level that would have done more damage on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happened 1 million years ago, which I think is what he postulates, what were those Anunnaki? He thinks so, and this Chris Hardy writes about it in her book, and that this group that landed here, terraformed Earth, created humans, wanted gold from mines, all of that stuff, that they also had a base on Mars, and they came from other solar systems. And he talks about that.
Mm-hmm. So that basically then would not be consistent with an ultra-dimensional aspect, right?
Yeah. When it comes to the Anunnaki, they're ETs from Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. And that they got in a war at Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. This comes through 2 other Air Force captains, 2005, Rachel's Eyes, and then another one, 2010, but Rachel's Eyes is the best one. And this was by Helen Luttrell, who had a daughter who was blind from childhood on. And the daughter wanted to go to college. And her mother, Helen, helped her with the American River College in Sacramento. And the daughter got into an apartment with her mother's help and the college help, with the idea that she was going to try to do this somewhat independently. And within 1 week, the college called her and said, "We'd like to have you have a roommate. We think that you could help this girl," and that this was a hybrid that a general who was working through Mather Air Force Base was overseeing, for reasons that he explained. It's a very amazing book, having to do with a hybridization program that he was involved with in the United States Air Force, and that this girl was one of their efforts. And then the whole big story to the Helen Luttrell and the daughter occurred around an event, and they were told that the source of a lot of the hybrids on Earth were from ETs from Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 who came and went and had terraformed in the past and were connected to the Anunnaki.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know you guys are both probably getting tired because we've been talking for like 4.5 hours.
Well, it's exhilarating because Peter Lavenda, I have never had discussions with anybody as interesting to me as what we've talked about.
I agree. But I got to throw a hypothetical out there. And this is, again, a total hypothetical on my part. Let's say in our evolution, and we had to go underground due to circumstances maybe out of our control, whether it's natural phenomenon or man-made. And we evolve into these gray, big-eyed looking beings, thinking about being underground for hundreds of years or possibly thousands. And they're coming back in time, and these are the grays that we witness to prevent us from causing it to begin with. Is that any? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Right.
I mean,
yes.
It would fit if we look at the evolutionary possibilities. If we were to become underground dwellers, gray skin, lack of sun, big eyes, lack of light. I mean, if we were underground dwellers through an evolutionary stage, is it possible that we would evolve with the technology being underground as we're building bunkers in the system? We have a wide range of technology that's being built underground right now. Who's to say that if something did catastrophic happen on the surface where we go underground, we evolve into these creatures, and now we're coming back in time, and these are our I don't want to even say not ancestors, but they're our future.
Right.
You know, that's also a possibility because, like, we think also I have to say we have to think outside the box. Not only is it because the universe is, I can't even put a number. It's almost impossible to think of a number of what's out there. But then you have like the interdimensional aspect. But there's also, I'm never going to discount the possibility that they're coming from the future. And I know people say, oh, the future. But hey, I think we limit ourselves by just on our basis of what we understand today. But look at the things we've accomplished now and what we would have thought about that 100, 200, 1,000 years ago, where we are now. So it's almost a naivete to think that on our terms are where we at now, where we're going to be 1,000 years and what we're capable of doing.
Assuming that Homo sapiens sapiens survives its violent self.
That's true. But, you know, and also going off world.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I see that.
Well, Elon Musk is going to take care of that.
Oh,
I swear to God, he's going to get to Mars.
Well, you know, you don't hear much of that, what was that, Independent Space One expedition hardly no more with 100 volunteers dwindled down to, I think it was supposed to be 10. I mean, I haven't heard much of that recently. I don't know if you both have, but.
No, I haven't.
Right? It's just like, I haven't heard it in the news whatsoever. It's just like it totally gone. But yeah, I mean, there is, trust me, and I speak to people too, and there is no doubt that there is propulsion systems that they're working on right now that is beyond what we're even comprehending. Let's just use an example. The X-37B is for public display. That's for the public to say, oh, we got something going around, a mini shuttle that's unmanned, that's going around the Earth for 2 years at a time. That's for public consumption. You know that they've got much more top secret craft that they're working. Even the triangles, and I've seen one in '95 that I reported to Peter Davenport of Newfork, and he confirmed that many people seen it from New York City up the Hudson to Canada, and it was a boomerang, and it had the 5 bluish whites on it. This is '95. This is before the Phoenix lights happened, because again, this is the Hudson Valley. This whole area had the sightings. Who's to say that a lot of these? I would say a high percentage of these are top secret craft. That's just my own opinion.
Well, let me just give you a personal experience that would contradict that.
Okay.
It was the November of 1980. It was 5 or 6. I think it was 1986. And I had been in a film production meeting in a bank in Aurora, Colorado. And I was coming out at December, that period of time. The sun goes down really fast and dark early because of the big Rocky Mountains. And as I came out of the bank, I ended up writing this down later. I remember it was 6:03 p.m. But it's like a twilight sky or very faint blue, but mostly dark, with stars visible, and then the silhouette of the Rocky Mountains. And I'm coming down the bank steps. I had a briefcase on my right shoulder. I am going on an angle toward my car. Something happened that made me spin so hard that the briefcase spun out and hit a car. I remember that. And instead of looking behind me, like somebody coming up from behind me, I find myself looking straight up. And above me, you'd have to put my hands out as far as I can stretch them apart. The entire sky above me was full of what I'm going to try to describe. The parking lot had those orange amber type lights on about 30, 40-foot poles in this big bank parking lot. There was not a single light of any kind on what was taking the sky up above me. But I could see so many details. Every square inch of this huge boomerang in which the front came together and reminded me of when you are in a classy hotel that has balconies, and the balconies will go around so that a building joins together, and the balconies all are nice and horizontal on the same levels. This looked like 5. I remember counting them. I was in a state of shock, but I remember as if you were looking at 5 balcony levels that came together at this angle inside of this boomerang. And then those 5 layers came out and tapered into the enormous ends, looked like quartz crystals. Not crystal itself, but faceted. The ends of the boomerang were faceted like quartz crystals. I used to have quartz collections, and I immediately thought in my mind, my God, it looks like I am looking at quartz crystal facets at the end of this boomerang. And then the only way that I was seeing all of this in detail, I am assuming, were from all of these orange lights, because this was barely moving. It was like the whole sky above me was covered by this boomerang. And I could see all these details and all these layers, and it was hardly moving. And I remember the moment, which may have been 3 seconds, but it seemed like eternity. How can anything this big be right above me, blocking out most of the sky, and I could not hear anything? It was preternatural silence. Nothing should have been that silent. And that I then realized I am looking at 3-dimensional shapes that they don't match what we would consider to be platonic solids or geometries. I was looking at shapes that I didn't recognize in any form. And the whole thing, and the closest I could come is if you took one of those orchid egg, when they for eggs, and it's a pre-made box, and if you take the eggs out and you turned it over, it has that molded look. This whole thing with all these strange shapes looked like the whole bloody thing was one piece with all these parts, and that suddenly maybe it stopped, and then it seemed like it started moving extremely slowly without any sound, and it literally just, I couldn't move. I was transfixed. I just watched it, and it went out of sight because it went into the darkness, not because it accelerated or popped out. Now that, to me, has always been a benchmark for what in the world, if you talk about other dimensional things, how could anything that big suddenly be in the sky and not have any sound? And something made me spin. That my briefcase hit a car.
Sounds like anti-grav. It sounds like some type of an anti-grav propulsion type of system where it doesn't make a sound and it just seems like it's floating. It has to be something to that capacity. It has to be.
And who was in that?
You know, it's interesting that you just described that, because if you remember earlier, Peter said that even today we would have difficulty describing objects similar to what they were seeing thousands of years ago in their time period. And that's a perfect example. I mean, what you've seen and what you're trying to describe, and it's still where it's almost difficult for you with everything that you know and your background and, you know, years of experience and research, yet it's still that you understand what I'm saying, Peter? And
Yeah.
I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
it just
Yeah,
shows.
and Paul, what was his name? John Andrews.
Mm-hmm.
John Andrews was working, I think it was Testor Corporation in San Diego, and they like to tweak the U.S. government by getting from Aviation Weekly and sources,
Mm-hmm.
and they would come out with toy models, not toys, scale models.
Mm-hmm.
That people would purchase because they would have whatever was the most advanced model that Testor Corporation could make that was tweaking, as the way they put it, the government's nose. So I'd known John. He used to go to various conferences. So when I got home, I wrote it down in my notebook as best I could, realizing I can't draw shapes that I've never seen.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really hard time, but I called him up and I told him what I just told you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, is this the new B? Back then it was the Aurora and the B-52 bomber.
Right.
And I said, have I just seen one of those two? And he said, no, you have not seen anything that any human is making.
That's why I gotta say, I'm gonna send you both the video clip in Skype that I captured in 2014. I am telling you, all right. I'm gonna give you an example, and my mother would never lie, and she's had experiences in the past in '85 in the Bronx, and I've had an experience in '95. Again, it was not something close. I had another experience in '99 on the beach in Mount Tauk, Long Island. And coming up here and moving to the Hudson Valley, I've captured stuff on film. Now, Mom, and she can tell you, this happened, I think, last year or the year before. My mother's not a liar. She saw a tall, translucent being about 7 feet tall with a head that goes outward, forward-like, protrudes, and then comes back, and its eyes were on its sides, and it looked at her, and then it went back into the hallway and kept walking. Now, my mother says that she's seen this in this house, so I would never call my mother a liar, but I unless I finally see something myself like that. But there's also times, like about 3 nights ago, I had the most incredible lucid dream that I actually woke up screaming. I had sleep paralysis, the whole 9 yards, and I don't want to get into the descriptive of the dream, but at one point, I was laying face down on my bed, arms to the side, and these little grays were attaching skinny, tiny wires from my toes, working their way up to my chest, and I could feel it going into my body, and I'm trying to wake up. I had like paralysis, and I'm screaming and moaning, and I woke up, and my mother ran into the room. What's going on? And there are little instances that I have experiences like that.
Well, wait. When you were, let me make sure I understand. Were you in vivid dream consciousness, or were you in beta consciousness like now when you had the impression of Grays putting these wires in you?
I will describe it like this. I can hear myself moaning, like if I'm trying to wake myself up, but I can't. It's really like hard to describe. I can almost hear myself screaming out while I'm in the dream, trying to wake myself up from it, because I am scared to death of these things around me, sticking these little skinny, and I mean a lot of them all over my body, and I'm trying to wake up. But there's more to this dream before this part, because it actually happened in 2 segments. I walk into my dining room and I see a small gray standing there. So I retreat back into my room, and I'm going to tell you the truth of the dream. I grabbed one by its throat.
Okay, just for a second.
Okay.
What is the shape of the head? There are pear shapes. There are praying mantis shapes.
No.
There are round shapes. What shape are you looking at?
Round. It was more rounded, but they were small. They were like 2 feet high.
Okay, these are androids.
Okay, now I'm going to tell you another dream that I had about a year ago of a dark gray, ugly looking gray with an almond shaped head standing at the bottom of my bed, crawling up my body. And just as it's coming to almost face level, I bite its finger. And I'm being honest, this is what happened in the dream. I bite its finger, it retreats, it scratches my ankle. I wake up with, and I've told my friends, and I've took pictures. I had 3 scratch marks on my ankle when I woke up.
Now, have you had, either during the vivid dreams or after you wake up, have you had any residual memory in which you are seeing either hieroglyphs, zeros, ones,
No.
Or images like a diorama?
No, but I will tell you, the only other instance I had a really vivid lucid dream was, and again, this is going to sound fantastic, but I'm in a craft, a structure. It's being built from the earth up, but it's not a space elevator. It's a huge, massive structure. And I see there's people on board, but they seem like there's humans from all nationalities. And there's these little things on the ground. I'm trying to think of like the shape, almost rectangular, but they're being controlled by something, and they're doing all kind of work all over the place. And they're building this giant space platform into space. And I could see ships leaving the platform. And in the dream, something's telling me that it's going to take hundreds of years. You all have to come together for this to happen. It was like almost like a message from something. And I could never explain that dream.
Well, have you ever had any images like on a screen, like your mind's eye screen, either when you're getting thought words or waking up from a vivid dream? Have you ever had real images out in the area beyond your mind's eye? Okay.
The only thing I can tell you as far as that, about 30 years ago, when I was younger, I had a dream, and again, this is the only thing that I could possibly put close to what you're saying. I had a dream of a road, and I'm standing on the road, and I'm looking toward the mountains, and I'm looking at what looks like an aerial fight between Air Force planes and alien craft.
What's the shape of the craft?
Oh my God! You know something?
There's triangles, there's spheres, there's discs, there's cylinders, there are diamonds, there are ice cream cones.
I know what you mean, but to be honest, I can't really remember what that was because it was a long time ago. I don't remember. All I remember is what I'm describing to you because it happened so long ago. But why this is so significant? Because when I moved up here about 10 years ago, I see the exact same street I've never seen in my life. Right down the block from where I live.
Where are you?
I'm in Baumville, New York. It's north of Newburgh. It's not far from Pine Bush, New York.
Oh, yeah. I've been to Pine Bush, yeah.
So, you know, there's little things. These are nuances. I have vivid dreams of something coming through my window, but I don't see it. Or coming through my patio door. And I can give you something. Like I said, I'm going to show you that video I captured, both of you, of the object that I captured. And a lot of people are puzzled by what the heck this is. Now, I even went on a local radio program, a morning show. They call me UFO Bill up here. I'm involved with the Pine Bush UFO Festival. Travis Walton stayed over my house a month ago. I mean, I'm very involved in the UFO community. But that saying, there are about a month ago, and I have the video clip of this too, I went to a place called Nuclear Lake, which is in Dutchess County, with a paranormal researcher and someone who was visiting me from the UK. And I was filming it on my Sony camcorder. I put the camera down, and I didn't know this till someone seen the video when I posted it up on my YouTube page. We're all standing there, and this is something totally different. It's not UFO related, but you could hear someone saying my name, Bill, like that twice on the tape. And we're just standing there. So there's always like some oddity that is connected to me in some weird way that things happen, and I have no explanation for it. My neighbor, across the other side of my property, about 2-3 years ago, it was 2:30 in the morning. This is what she claims. She was outside in front of her house at 2:30 in the morning, and she was waiting for her friend, and she's seen 3 things jump out the tree, bipedal, run into the woods, and she described them as hairless, golden in color, and they ran into the woods, and she was scared to death. She moved away. She actually left because she was frightened to death. Now,
well, Pine Bluff has had experiences with whatever you want to call it, the menagerie of all sorts of talk about cryptozoology. I wonder what it is. Underground, the water proximity. Why does that particular part always seem to have UFOs and creatures?
Now, I've spoken to well, he's retired now, a former lieutenant from the town police, and I asked him off the record, because he wouldn't go on the record, have any of the officers seen a UFO? He said, Bill, many of the retired officers have seen UFOs, seen them going into the Hudson River, out of the Hudson River. And I live 5 minutes from the Hudson River, not even, 2 minutes away from the Hudson River. And there, like I said, there's a lot of oddities that go on up here. I do not know why. And like I said, talk is cheap. But when I do my sky watches and I do my videos and I capture stuff, first person I send it to is Mark D'Antonio, because he's a very good friend of mine.
Oh, Mark is very good.
Oh, he is awesome. By the way, he's doing live streams now. If you go to YouTube, Sky Tour live stream, that's Mark D'Antonio's observatory in front of his house.
He stressed something in Roswell that I hadn't made an impression on me before, that the M sequence stars literally are built by Mother Nature to last for, and this is the quote, trillions of years. We have a sun that would last 10 billion years. We're a G sequence star. The majority of the stars in this universe are the M sequence stars. Trillions. I didn't know that. Trillions of years. It's very, very, very slow burning.
Yeah, Mark is a really good friend of mine. He is a great human being, person, very humble. He is an incredible person. I got to say that. He is really a great person. And I didn't mean to take us off on a totally different tangent.
Well, I'm wondering, did Peter go to sleep?
But I got to ask you both.
Who's laughing? You woke me up.
I know. I don't want to keep you guys on because it's been a long night. But I just have one question.
Peter, it has been such a pleasure and so much fun. And I just realized, God, it's got to be near 1 o'clock because you're East Coast. I'm still 10 till 11. And I wasn't thinking, I've been in a time bubble with you. And I wasn't thinking East Coast time. God bless you.
Now, I got a question quickly before we hang up. Do either of you come to the East Coast at all to do speaking engagements or conferences?
It just depends. You know, it happens, but
I'm on the East Coast, so I mean,
Peter, where are you? What state are you in?
In Florida, South Florida, outside of Fort Lauderdale.
Wow. Do you ever wander up north?
I'm from the Bronx.
No way. Come on. Where? I'm from Pelham Bay originally.
Oh my God. I'm from Westchester Square.
Where?
Westchester Square.
Westchester Square?
I'm like 3 or 4 stops down on the subway.
Oh my God, I eventually moved down there. I went to Lehman High School.
I went to Columbus.
Oh my God.
This is amazing.
Yeah, I know where Lehman High School is.
I used to go to the grotto right by Columbus.
Yeah.
And you guys who grew up there are some sort of hybrid test by ETs.
That is so freaking cool. Well, I have to say this because I am, and I'm just putting this out there, I am part of the organization of the Pine Bush Fair every year. Last year I got Travis to come. I got Mark D'Antonio to speak. If either one of you are available in the third Saturday of May next year, you let me know. I will put you guys on the schedule to do a speaking
Okay.
presentation.
I think that's when they're doing Contact
Yeah,
2018.
probably.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But if
And Peter, I didn't know you've been at all of the contacts.
Oh no, I was at one a couple of years ago. I saw you briefly. We were on the same with Jimmy Church doing the radio thing, but I was doing. God, they worked me to death on that one. Had the entire day Saturday because they screwed up the schedule. So I was talking from morning till night, and then there was a year or two in between. Then I did the last one, so I've only done two.
Oh, okay.
Well, my offer, like I said, I got. I know, I got your contacts, but if you have mine. If you're ever in the area, because I'm trying to get Travis to come back. He said yes. Mark is definitely coming back. I will know from Michio Kaku in September. Cheryl Costa wants to appear. So I can only have 5 because it's a one-day event. They have a big festival. We had like 8,000 people in May.
Cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's a really cool event, and like I said, you two would be on the top. I actually asked Whitley, and he kind of bid a little bit on it because remember, the whole communion thing.
Sure, it's up there.
Yeah, that's literally like a half
It's
hour.
a Chord, New York.
Yeah, it's a half hour from Pine Bush.
Yeah.
So I wanted him to think about speaking in front of the people that is in his own community, the Pine Bush area. I mean, I think that would be awesome to have.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I still have time to go over this because it's it's only July, but I have to start thinking about who I'm gonna put together. So, like I said, if you guys ever have the time or the interest of coming, because like I said, I will make sure you get a speaker's fee, the whole 9 yards, and if I can arrange it to happen, and if you guys have an open date to do so, I think Jennifer Stein's gonna come down with Peter too.
Well, what the best thing to do, probably for Peter as well, is put something in an email. Here are the terms, here are the dates, and all of that, so that it's concrete. And then we have something that we can look at.
Yes, Peter and Jennifer actually were there the last 2 years, this year and last year.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Robbins.
Yes, and what's funny and ironic? Peter and Larry Warren stayed at my home last year.
Well, they have both been beaten up badly.
Yes, and I have pictures with the both of them when they were joking around in my backyard, where Peter has a machete and doing a number on Larry. And I have those pictures on my wall right behind me. And I look at them and I say, Peter probably would love to do that for real right now.
Exactly. I think that they've had it with each other from here till hell freezes over. Yeah. And the funny thing is that there was Ben Jameson was a mathematician teaching in a college in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And there was a conference back in, I think it was 1986. And that we had all of us had only known about R.E.F. Bentwaters since after the October 1983 London newspaper had the Art Wallace, that was the phony name that Larry Warren was using, talking of that story that got printed. And we were at a conference, and Larry knew Ben Jameson's family, so the three of us went off someplace, and I had a tape recorder, and Ben Jameson had a tape recorder, and we recorded, because I've still got all the tapes. We went for 6 hours. Wow. And we heard the Larry Warren that I wish the whole world had been exposed to. And he said during that 6 hours that he said, I have never meant for anybody to think I was lying. I have been trying to protect Adrian Bustinza. And I've been trying to protect Adrian Bustinza since December 27th, the middle night. And he went through it chapter and verse, and those 6 hours were filled with Larry Warren telling everything that he knew and saw, but talking about how he took Adrian's story because that day he said he heard a man sobbing as he was walking in their dorm. And he and Adrian shared a room, a bit where bunks or something. And that when Larry came in and Adrian was sobbing, that's how he heard the story of Adrian seeing John Burroughs go up in light and then having a debriefing in which there was some presentation of a gray to a group of people, and that Adrian said that he couldn't move his body, that nobody could move their heads or their arms, and that the gray being was preceded by black and white film from the Korean War, the Vietnam War, various military scenes in which silver discs or spheres or these different shapes were interacting with airplanes. Some were Soviet MiGs, some were American, some were RAFs. They were all different. And that all these movies, they were shown no narration. They were just shown the black and white films of all these interactions with the silver discs and these different military planes. I think in one scene, a military plane was blown out of the sky by one of the silver discs. There were scenes in Vietnam of a craft rising right out of the jungle floor. The person who was filming, it was a picnic, and picnic sounds English. This was in Vietnam, and these were military people, but meaning they were eating some food. And one of the guys was running the camera on his fellow guys eating like they were having fun. And then the camera pans and you see this big silver disc rising up out of the jungle floor and vines snapping. And these are all descriptions from Adrian Bustinza of what they were shown. And then after the film, behind a scrim came a gray being, and that they had telepathic downloads, and that Adrian was Catholic, and that he really started crying again as he was trying to tell Larry Warren that the Catholic Church was a manipulation by these grays, and that wars were allowed for our entertainment. I've never forgotten those words.
Wow. That's intense.
And that was, that's the Larry Warren recounting in the barracks with Adrian Bustinza after the night of December 27, 1980, that I believe that Larry Warren was trying to tell us the truth. Mm-hmm. And then he was guilty of running drugs. He was guilty of being a part of military guys at RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge that probably deserved to be in jail. And the government didn't have any problem pulling a noose around Larry Warren because he was self-destructive. And then he went on to drink way too much, became an alcoholic, is what everybody says, with demons raging inside of him. And the rest is the sad history of now. They're basically, left at Eastgate is being called a complete travesty. Wow. And that was Peter Robbins' life.
Yes, he spent many years.
And so the whole thing, it's so horrible because that 6-hour discussion, I think we were close to truth. But that 6-hour discussion isn't represented in Left at Eastgate one whit.
That's unfortunate, because the authenticity of it all. That's,
And yeah, none of it, sir. Well, dear Peter Levenda, thank you for a most exciting evening.
No worries. I had a great time.
Yes.
And all right, you guys.
I have to edit that file. I'll do it tomorrow because it's around 1 o'clock. I'll send you guys the file tomorrow, and it was an absolute honor to be with both of you tonight and producing the show and having this 3-hour sub-show discussion.
Well,
you should have taped that.
It's just been fantastic. Yeah,
it really was.
Really.
Well, both of you have a great night. And Peter, if you ever come up north, let me know.
I sure will. Thanks a lot, Bill.
All right. Have a good night to both of you.
Thank you, Peter.
Good night.
More later.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was weird. That was bizarre. What just happened with that? It just wanted to come back. I have to say, that was outrageous. That was outrageous. I was like a little kid enjoying that big time. You have no idea. To have Linda Moulton Howe and Peter Levenda on, and then to find out that he grew up freaking blocks away from me. That's just so intense and crazy. And it's funny because the sky's cleared up too, and I'm like exhausted from talking and doing production and being involved with this for the last 5 hours. I started, and it's kind of weird because the show was not supposed to be a live show. It was supposed to be a pre-record because this was the show that was scheduled for last night on KGRA for Phenomenon Radio. And then at the last minute, I was scrambling and I asked the boss, Mr. Hopster, can I go live with this? Because the show that's on currently at 8 p.m. now is no longer going to be on. A new show is going to replace it in a couple of weeks. So I asked the boss, can I put this on live? The heck with pre-record. Let's do this live. He says, Bill, do what you think is best. So I said, okay. If that's what he told me, I'm going live. And the timing was a little off. I have to clean up the file a little bit because there was times I didn't know she was going to a break. And I was like waiting dead air. Not really that bad. Maybe a second. And then I'm running the commercial because I'd never worked with them before. But then to come here afterwards and have them on for 3 hours. And I had to throw that Pine Bush thing in there because that would be a freaking coup. That would be a freaking coup if I can get Linda. I would even say Peter Levenda too. He's just amazing. I mean, wow. And you could tell Contact in the Desert, and it's true. It does happen around the same time. I am drained, I got to tell you. And I'm really upset because the skies are clearing up. That's what's freaking me out. It had to clear now. I mean, wow. It's already 1:04. But I'm going to, I don't know. There was so much information that was said. I may have to make this private. Because there was a lot of stuff said that can kind of rub certain individuals the wrong way, and I am not going to be the cause of that. If people that were tuning in the whole time know what I'm talking about. And I'm not in the business of doing streams where people are being spoken about without themselves being present to defend themselves. I'm just, you know where I'm coming from. I'm a little tired right now, but I think I'm going to have to definitely make it private. But at least everybody here got to enjoy it. I think, and that's the main thing. You all were here. And I can still For those that I have contact with directly, I can still send you the private link once I make it private. It's not going to be taken down. It's just going to be made private, which is what I'm going to. Well, I can't do it now. I'll wait till I'm done with the feed, because I'm going to protect those that I know. And like I said, I don't do this for the stunts. I just did it for putting it out there for all of you to listen to and enjoy it, because I was enjoying it just as much as everybody else. That's why I didn't talk much. Plus, the conversation was so intense. And it's funny because you know how we do the Sky Watches and we talk on Skype and we go for 7 hours? And toward those, well, not even, sometimes we go for freaking 9 hours. But you know how the conversation, it starts to get all over the place? Well, even the best, even the pros, even those that are the with the backgrounds like with a list pages long, even they tend to get tired and go stray a little bit, and it's just a human factor. But it was really awesome to have both of them on. And like I said, I'm not going to delete it. I'm just going to privatize, put it private. So it won't be available publicly, but there's got to be a way that I can make it accessible to individuals if they want to see it or listen to it again. Because I know Kathy didn't hear the whole thing. Some people may have not caught it from the beginning. And Ken is saying he didn't catch it from the beginning. And yeah, they said a lot of things about Nancy in chat. I don't know which Nancy I'm going to say. Is it Nancy F or Nancy W? Oh my. And Tony didn't hear the whole thing. And like I said, it was really intense and interesting. And it's impossible to clean it up because it takes away the content of the conversation. I was surprised. Excuse me. I was surprised Linda said a cuss word. And then when the whole not NASCA, when the MJ12 documents and saying names there, and then toward the end with Larry, I'm like I said, I can't do it because that was meant. That's getting a little bit too personal to me. But then again, maybe because believe me, people. I have to say this. There's some really trolly, malicious people out there that like to just cause problems and see other people in pain. Maybe because they're in pain, or maybe they're suffering in some way, and they want to see others suffer just like themselves, or misery, like they say, misery loves company. So like I said, some people would feed off that and love that, using snippets and saying this person said that, and this on the record. They're saying this. I am not going to fall into that game, if you know what I mean. I just won't. I won't. So this is only, how long has the stream been going now? Started at about 10, so it's only a 3-hour stream. I actually can put it in Movie Maker, download it, and re-upload it after I clean it up. So, and yeah, I will do that. I'm going to leave it up till tomorrow afternoon. This way, those that were here that haven't seen it and heard it, they can go back and listen to it. I think that's a good idea. So yeah, I like that idea. Whoever just said that. Who was it that said that? Let me see. Who was it that came up with that idea? Yeah, Ken. Ken came up with the idea. I agree with that. We'll leave it up. Again, I just don't want to be... Yeah, I know I need to go to bed because I definitely want to do a Skywatch tomorrow. because the weather's going to be nice. So there's still some clouds rolling in. It's not going to be like where it's going to clear up all nice. And Dead Sun, I definitely will. We got to definitely talk, because I'm telling you, that dream I had was wicked. Wicked. I never had a dream like that before, I can tell you that. And I'm just glad I've been able to sleep the last few nights and not even have a dream like that again. So, that's a good thing. So yeah, we'll leave it up. Because I think the only really those that have been watching are the people that's true. I could send it private and send. I could definitely do that. But yeah, that's true. I am going to do that. Let me see if I can do that right now. And I'm glad all of you in there to tell me, because it helps. Let me see. Let's see what happens. All changes saved. Okay. I have just made it private. And let me see if everybody's still in chat. Everybody's still in chat? Now, there's got to be a way. Let me get back. I'm really tired. Oh, no. Where did it go? That's not happening. That cannot be. That'd be too funny. I'm trying to find my own video. Oh, there it is. Where did everybody go? Okay. Why don't I see anybody in chat? What did I do wrong? All right, we might have to put this back. Oh my, have I done? Let me go back to public. I think that totally screwed it all up. All right, let's go back to public. All right, we should be back to public now. Now, what just happened? Okay. Let's see what just happened. Okay, what just happened? Ben is laughing. I'm laughing too. I don't know what I just did. I mean, everybody just left. Oh, what's this now? It just died. Ken just sent me a message. It just died. That's because I put it to private and it just died. I don't know how people were able to still be watching, though. Everybody's slowly coming back because I made it public again. That was bizarre. I never tried that before. What happened was I went private and I lost everybody. That's what happened. Oh my, that was funny actually, because I didn't know what the heck was going on. I just saw my numbers dropping slowly. I know, Ken, I got your message. You just said it just died. It did. It just died. I lost half of everybody's gone. Only half of you were left. Not even. Oh, that's priceless. That really is priceless. So what I'm going to do, Jenny's gone. Everybody's gone. Way to go, Bill. Oh, my God. I can't stop laughing because it was funny. I would never do that. I'd just stop and not say goodnight to everybody. My mother's probably wondering, why am I laughing to myself? Oh, that was crazy. Yeah, I think, is that what happened? Only the mod stayed? No, because Nancy left. She's gone. She came back just now. But then Tony says she's still watching. Is that possible that only the mods were able to watch? That's weird. So who was able to watch the private stream? If anybody's in chat that was still able to watch the private stream, say I did, because then I'll know. Oh, there's no way. I'm going to smoke. But it's not PPP. So yeah, I'll tell you one thing, that was a great 3 hours. That was really good. And I want to thank all of you for being here and, enjoying it. Jay never lost it. E4 thought it was the Grays. I'm joking about this right now, but I'm telling you all dead serious. Now, I don't know how many of you have had an experience, a sighting, or paranormal thing happen to you. It changes you. I don't do this for 1,000 viewers. I don't do this because of an ego. I do it because this stuff means a lot to me. Because it affected me personally in my life. That's why I do this. And it's awesome to meet people like you to be a part of it. That's what it's all about. There's some people that do this because they just want to make a name for themselves, and the fame, I don't know what kind of fame, but they aspire to be some big ego-driven person. It's not why I got into this. And the people that know me, that really know me, like Dead Son, he's known me for a long time. Lorraine, since the beginning. These people have known me for years. A few, they know that we all met in a chat room on a network talking about our experiences. I remember calling in a radio show. Nervous wreck. Nervous. Stuttering, stumbling, and going on a radio show on that network to talk about my experiences. And that's how it started. I never wanted to really come out and talk. It took me years to come out and talk about this stuff. I didn't feel comfortable. And Mom went on that radio show too, matter of fact. And I wish Lorraine was here because Lorraine might have been there when I did that. That's like 5-6 years ago, easy now. And then I got more involved. I said the sky watching. And then I got into doing co-hosting on radio shows. And I became so passionately involved, driven. And it's very weird because, like tonight, yeah, I had like almost a fan-driven excitement. But then I'm saying to myself, but I can talk to them almost on equal level. Because I've had experiences. I've talked to so many people too. And when Linda told me about her, I never knew that she had an experience like that. It's something you share with each other. And yeah, I know there's skeptics, and you know what? I respect skeptical views because I'm not sure what the heck I've seen too. I don't know what to make of these dreams or the voices that come on camera tapes and the objects I picked up in the sky or whatever. I don't know what to make. I don't have no. If I say I saw a freaking alien, I would say I seen a freaking alien. I have never, ever come close to anything like that. Some have. Some make that claim. I cannot make that claim. And I'm not going to be like one of these channels that go on, that's a UFO. No doubt that's an alien craft. Hell no. I'm not doing that. Because I have no evidence. But I'm going to tell you, when You have all these little things happening. It becomes not a coincidence. It becomes, okay, this is a pattern developing here. This needs more investigation. This needs me to become more involved in it. Because something's going on. I don't know what it is, but there's something going on, and I'm not losing my mind. So it's just one of those things. And until you have an experience, seriously, it's hard to, how would I say it? It's because I'm really tired right now. It's been a long day. It's hard to feel that commonality, between something like that. Yeah, so like I said, I've had my share, and I know that a lot of people here are either curious about it, want to learn more about it, and if they're serious about it, that's what it's all about. I mean, I got to say, everybody that I know that comes in here are just awesome people. Well, how many times do we really have the trolls now? Very, very rarely do we have trolls. But they're around, they're listening, they're watching. Sometimes they're watching for other purposes, to see what we're doing. But in general, we don't usually have that issue. So, what's this? There's a Radio East YouTube fellow who has type whatever blood near Albany, so he's not far from me. He might live. Well, Albany has a major airport, by the way, an international airport. That's why he probably has planes hovering all around him. Albany has a really big airport, so that's maybe why he has all those planes around his house. And again, we have to be rational, like Duplicat said. We have to be rational. We have to be logical. We have to reach all the possibilities before jumping off the bridge and reaching some crazy conclusion. Because then it just takes away all the credibility. How could you be credible if you're going to go out on a limb and say such and such and such outlandish stuff? For me, that's an insult. For a person who, like me, who's seeking the truth and trying to get answers, I would be very upset. Yeah, sometimes I'd go in the front of the camera with a mask, but I'm joking. For those who know me know I'm just joking around, just to break the ice and make everybody laugh. But most of the time we discuss, we get on the serious topics and we try to speak about things that are pertinent to what we're looking at here. And that's what we try to emphasize. That at least that seriousness of taking this stuff seriously. And you hear sometimes like people like Linda Moulton Howe, just like just now, and the two people that were just on, and people that I've had on in the past from time to time. And I'm probably going to get them more involved in coming on too. Now that the Perseids is coming at the end of this month and into August, I'll probably bring some people on. So, yeah. Okay, so he's nowhere. I'm telling you, Albany has a really big. I have a small airport, and you see how many planes I get going north to south. I mean, they're traveling from the north part of the country to going toward the city or wherever they're going. I'm on a major. I'm actually so tired. I'm losing my freaking thought process here. Flight path. It's this direction is not where the flight path is. We're looking west, northwest right now. But to my east, that's a major flight path. And that's where you see all those planes going back and forth. So I know what it is. So, and that's not what I'm looking for. And we know what the satellites look like. So, yeah, the Perseids are coming. And we'll do that. And I'm going to end the stream any minute. because I am really tired. I've been up all day, and I want to do a sky watch tomorrow because the weather tomorrow night is supposed to be clear. So we'll do it again tomorrow. But before I do that, and for those that are in YouTube chat too, you know that you could always come on Skype with us, join the fun when we're all together on Skype. That's when it's really fun to have everybody coming on. Jello and Heidi and the whole crew comes on, and we just have a lot of fun here. So maybe in the future, those that are in first time in YouTube or not familiar with it, you're always welcome to come with us on Skype. And if there is a way to send the Skype information to me without anybody else seeing it, it's simple. We can go to KGRA chat. You send me a private message, and you'll be able to give me your information. I'll be able to give you mine. That, to me, that's like the perfect place to do it. Because we're not going to put anybody's information publicly here in that chat room. So don't do it, because then everybody else obviously can see it. I would give you my email address, but again, I have to be weary of trolls. So we'll find a way for all those that may be new to come on with us and hang out. But I would definitely want to give a shout out and to everybody that's in chat right now. And I'm only showing a few people. That's almost impossible. CND Boy in Canada, Jay Rich, Ken Hancock, of course Jello, and say hello to Miss Jello, Tony the Night Owl, and Truth Freeze. But I know earlier there was a whole bunch of people in there, like Dapple Ben. Hope I have his name right. Lorraine and Kathy and Nancy's. Who else was in there? Because let me think. There was a lot of people in chat earlier, and it's just Duplicate. And Duplicate's been here like since the beginning. He's one of the people from almost the beginning, if I remember right. Duplicate has been here for God knows how long. Almost like I said, since the beginning. I know there's Nancy. Nancy's in there now. Truth Freeze. So, Pro or Prow. Why do I always mess up your freaking name? Prow. Or is it Pro? I might be wrong. If I say it both ways, one of them's got to be right, right? And there's Dapple Ben. Oh, man. And we will do this again tomorrow night. I do not have to produce for KGRA tomorrow. Matter of fact, I better check the network right now because I'm running it. Oh, that would be nice. I've been talking this whole time. Whew, it's streaming. Let me see if we're all scheduled for tomorrow night. Yeah, I'm good till 10 o'clock tomorrow night for KGRA. Everything's all set up. So that's good. Let's see. I think it is a full moon. And yeah, hopefully we'll do this again tomorrow. I'll probably start about 8 o'clock Eastern time. And I hope I said hello to Ken and everybody. But Bill's going to bed. And these clouds, even though there was a break, it looks like there's more clouds coming in the back of these. So it's not like it's going to clear up completely till tomorrow night anyway. So again, I want to thank everybody in YouTube chat, everybody that's been watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I am going to take that video down, even though it was fantastic. I'm taking it down. I may even just delete it altogether. Oh, I got the download button. Oh, it just appeared. I never seen that one before. So if you don't know how to download, if you go to Firefox, the add-on that you can go to get the add-on download. As long as it's going to take me to download, you have a chance to download it too if you want to keep it. But until then, oh, and Tony, Lisa, everybody. Anyway, I'm out of here. I'm going to bed. So hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow night. And again, God bless. Be well, be safe. And I really, really thank all of you for being here. It means a lot to me. Makes it special, really. It makes it really enjoyable. And I hope you enjoy it as well. So I'm going to stop streaming. Now, Jello, if I make it private before I get off, Jello, come on Skype with me for a minute. Are you hooked up? Because you're good with this stuff, with the YouTube stuff. Who sees it if I make it private? Can my mod see it, or Amanda's streaming right now? Later, Ben. Have a good night. Okay. We need to talk. All right. If you get the Firefox browser, you can get the add-on. And the add-on is a YouTube downloader. And you can get that add-on so you could download YouTube videos. Okay. I'll show you. How's that? I'll stay on for a few more minutes to show you. Can you pass protect video? That's a really good question. Jello would know a lot more, but I'm going to show you guys. And I'll do it with my screen share so you can see it. And let me start it from the beginning so you can see what I'm doing. So don't go, don't anybody leave yet, just quite yet. I'm going to bring Jello on first. Jello, I'm calling you. Then we'll cut out in 10 minutes. So we're going to bring Jello on.
Yes.
What's happening?
How you doing?
I'm freaking ready to pass out over here.
Why? Tomorrow's another day. Why are you even calling me, sir?
Oh, no. I want you to just tell me about... We're still on the air, by the way.
Yep. No problem. Appreciate it.
I want you to tell me about this private chat. Who can see it? Who can't? Also,
No. The video, right? You're talking about a YouTube video, right?
Yeah, like
this
one
one in particular?
On. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever it's done, it'll take a while to process. If it's a long stream, it could take up to 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, that I know.
To process fully. Right. Now, other people will be able to see it. They may not be able to see the entire video, but
they'll still see segments.
Yeah, just segments. Exactly. They may not be able to catch the beginning, probably the tail end, but either way, just make it go to the video settings and turn it to private. If it's private, only you can see it. And if it's unlisted, only those with the link will be able to see it.
So I'm better off making it unlisted and then sending the link to all those that might be in chat.
Right. If they want to be able to watch this later, or for if you want to share that video with somebody later, if there's an F-bomb in there, I think you'll be okay.
No,
if you leave it up, you might make it 18, but
no, it's not even about the F-bomb. It's about what was said.
People insensitive. Yeah, gotcha. I mean, once you delete it, it's gone.
Okay, so
you can download it though.
Right, but I want to be able to share with others that didn't see the whole thing, like friends of mine.
Yeah, you can share it. Let me see what.
So on listing, I'll be able to share it with like anybody in chat in the future.
Right. Yeah. When it's unlisted, in other words, if somebody goes to your video page and if they go to your page and they click on videos, it's not even going to show up.
Okay.
But if you send that link to somebody, like I've got a video, I sent you a video, I think once, maybe me on the drums or something.
Yes, your father.
And then I sent it and I edited it and then I made it public. But the one I sent you, I think, was unlisted.
So that's what I'll do. I'll make it unlisted. So right now I'm going to share my screen because they want to know about the YouTube download add-on. So I am going to do that right now. I got to.
Hey. Sorry about that. I just had a bunch of feedback.
All right, let me share my monitor. Actually, I don't even want them to see that, but it's okay.
Now I think you were doing Skype earlier, right? With the previous call?
Yeah, I was on a show. I produced a show tonight on KGRA. They were
that was through KG. Okay, gotcha.
And then we came here.
Gotcha. Yeah, because just overhearing me in the background, I seem like I'm really loud, really hot compared to you. You're good though, but
I can boost mine up, but I try to keep it low.
That's fine.
Oh my God, that's why.
That was fun.
Oh my!
It's like I just fell in a hole.
Okay, so here's the screen. If you go to the upper on Firefox browser, if you go up to the corner here, open the menu with those three little bars. You go to add-ons. When you go to add-ons, I already have it. You look for the one-click YouTube video downloader.
I'm looking at YouTube. You're sharing your screen on YouTube. That's what I'm looking. Do I need to be looking on Skype?
No. I'm sharing it on YouTube. I'm trying to tell them where to go get the YouTube downloader.
I'm just 30 seconds behind, though. We all are.
My toolbar for Norton. Okay, I got to fix that later. But you just go look for the one-click YouTube video downloader on the add-ons. So get add-ons.
Nice. I see that at the top.
Yeah, you would search for it. Get the add-on, the one-click YouTube video downloader. It has to be Firefox.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to get that little option that's on the video right there. Download.
Didn't disable. I'm reading the very bottom.
It's right there, right underneath the video. There'll be a download in red.
I got you. Okay. You can take the video and download an MP4 version of it.
Exactly.
You use OBS, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you start streaming, you also click Start Recording. So everything you stream, you're recording a backup on the fly.
That's true too. But you know what? Then I'm gonna have so much space being taken on my computer.
Mm-hmm. And then it crashes. If it'll do an MP4, it should be. I wonder how much it's compressing. Like what it looks like compared to the original. Well, the YouTube version's compressed too.
Too bad. I'm gonna show them something.
That's cool.
You guys see? Oh no, I can't do it. I was gonna show them what it looks like when I see the video. I can't do it though. Oh well, it's okay. But
cool.
Anyway, they got to know what I'm talking about.
That's awesome, man. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, no, it's really good to have that.
Cool. So I can steal your videos and post them on my YouTube. No, I wouldn't do that. If I did, I'd ask you first, and then I'd also put the link in there to the original. Make sure I give you credit. That's just how I roll. No, I wish more people did that.
It's really good to have because sometimes you'll see a video that you want, and you could just press that button and you download it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You know? Especially those videos that go "pal" in the background, you know.
And the thing is,
Miss Jello just laughed in the background. She heard me.
And the thing is, you can do it in different formats and at different quality.
Right. FLV, MP4.
Yeah. So it gives you that option. So
man, nothing is safe these days.
Yeah, there isn't really. That's why I got to do that. I've got to make this unlisted because if they had this, they just download it.
Yeah.
And again, it's all due to the sensitivity of what was discussed, and I am not going to,
right.
I'm protecting people.
Sure. No, it makes sense.
I have to. It's the right thing to do.
I mean, you never know if somebody was listening and like, hey, you're so-and-so, and it's just a phone call or a text message away, like, hey, go to Bill Skywatch, he's talking, or somebody else is talking, not you, but, Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, then the damage is done. But it's always, like, some of these videos, I regret deleting some videos also. So I've been starting to make them private more often than not. Because every now and then I like to go back and look at the video and like, holy crap. There's one that Miss Jello and I did when we were coloring for like 3 hours. And man, we didn't even have a drop of alcohol, but we were acting a fool, man. We were just going crazy. And I'm like, man, no wonder this sucker's private. I can't let people watch this. This is nuts. The people that were in the live stream were already, like, you guys are crazy, man. Yeah, no, it was good times, but
it's just like I said. Once I make it unlisted, it's going to be available for anybody I want to send the link to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anybody you send that link to. But now, they can share it too. So, once the link's there, it's there. It's out. In other words, if it gets in the wrong hands, then somebody could list it, embed it in their page, or there it is.
All right. So if I make it private, only I can see it.
Only you can see it.
It may be better that I make it private and then take out the portions.
Exactly what I was about to say. Make it private, download it later, and then if you want to edit it and repost it,
yes,
that's up to you. Like I said, once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to delete it. I think that's a good thing. I think I'll privatize it, download it with that little button thing, and then I'll repost it. Yeah, that's a good idea. Are you going to be around tomorrow night?
I should be. I got to get up early, go out to the property, and we're going to be.
Oh my God, I still got to edit files. I got to. Oh my God.
You'll be there. Tomorrow's another day.
Yeah,
the files will be there.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to bed. And so say goodnight to Mrs. Jello, Miss Jello, and I'll hit you.
Go ahead.
I'll hit you if you're around tomorrow night after your sun sets or whatever the heck you're doing. And
I may not. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, you get a nice clear sky tomorrow night.
That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying.
Look at that. Look in the upper right-hand corner on your shot right now.
Put the star.
Just poking through, just peeking its eye, nice and bright.
Look what's coming to the left, coming in.
Yeah, I saw that earlier. So, cool. Well, we'll see you hopefully hear you and see you tomorrow night. And maybe, I don't know what your plans are, if you want to do Skype or
Well, tomorrow
whatever.
night, I think we're going to bring the whole crew in. It's been a while.
Cool. Sounds good. I'll get the cider ready.
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, me too. I think I might have a couple tomorrow myself.
Oh no.
No, not tequila. Not tequila. No.
No cookies.
No, oh God, never again. One time done. Never again. Ever.
Right.
I do not like. See, I'm a person who likes to be in control at all times.
Yeah. No. Trust me. I know the feeling.
When something like that happens, and I don't know my senses like that. Where I like to know what's going on around me. I like to have my bearings. And when I'm off guard like that, that's a scary thing. I don't like that.
You're put outside of your comfort zone for too long of a period.
Yeah, no. I don't like that. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I like to know what's going on around me and being sharp at all times.
Yep, that's it.
Having a couple of drinks is one thing. But when you have no control and there's no way for it to be gone, you have to deal with the ramifications and the consequences of your actions, and you don't know when it's going to end. Yeah, because that's what it felt like. I was like begging for it to stop.
Oh gosh,
I was begging for it to stop. I said, "Oh my God, let me at least go to sleep." And you know what the funny thing was? After it was all said and done, and I'm laying down and relaxing, and I'm in the room because the house was packed. There was people sleeping everywhere. I had bodies laying everywhere.
Oh yeah.
So Mark was in the middle room, Eric was in the other room. Me and my mother were sharing the queen bed, and my friend Mike was on the air mattress in the room, in the floor. And all of a sudden, we just started, we broke out in a laughter. And the laughter just went on for 20 minutes, laughing about
Isn't it great?
Stupidest things. We were just saying, like, there was if you remember years ago, now I don't know how old you are, but I'm older than you, I know that. But there was a commercial, Fiat commercial. And it's like, open the door. And it's nice. So we were doing stupid things like that because we used to laugh about that when we were kids. Like,
those moments are priceless, though, man. I'll tell you.
Stupid.
They're fun.
It's nice. And we were just cracking up on the stupidest things. So, but you know what?
It's great.
At least I ended my night on a nice high note. No pun intended.
No pun or pun intended.
Yeah, maybe pun intended. But again, Jello, I don't even drink no more. I don't have time. I'm too busy with the radio network. I'm too busy with life, things going on. I don't have time. And then my tolerance is super low. So after a beer, I'm already feeling heavily buzzed.
Yeah.
Because
depends on what you eat and all that stuff, but still.
But when you don't do nothing for months at a time, your tolerance is so low, you know?
Right.
So this is the thing, that I have to contend with. And if I do decide to have a beer, it's probably going to be one. Another thing that's sad is I don't even like the taste anymore. I'm losing.
You tried that cider, right? That Down East, you didn't like it?
Yeah, that was good. I might have to go get some hard cider tomorrow.
Limit yourself to 2 cans.
Yeah, exactly.
And reevaluate.
Yeah,
and then another can, maybe 3.
It's almost like drink 1 per hour and see how you do.
That's it. That stuff hits you quick.
It does.
I think it's a sugar rush.
Because I remember back when I was young, I drank something, I think it was called Blue Hawaii. It was one of these exotic drinks that you get at a restaurant. And it had like 7 different rums in it. And
oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. I'm telling you, I remember having 2 of those, and then I remember no more.
Wow.
It's like
Yeah, I just
that.
looked that up. You can put a bunch of stuff
You s-
blended, pureed, and you name it.
Oh my god! And you're talking to a guy who used to do funnels back in school. Handstands, keg stands,
Right.
party animal. I can't do that no more. I grew up 30
No.
years ago. I stopped all that crazy, insane behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And now, and it's the funny thing is, my friends make fun of me because I was known as the big party animal till I was like 21, going crazy, having a good time. And they're like, no, you, of all people, you don't do
Right.
this or that. I say, no, I don't. And I don't even like it. And they're like, wow. And then you look back and you know that some of your friends died because they continued doing some things.
Yeah. Right.
They never
Yep.
grew out of it. And specifically, I'm talking like cocaine. They either had heart attacks or, whatever. I never had. I was never in the crowd of the heroin or like the heavy. Cocaine was like I'm not going to give my age away, but it was a thing at a certain point in my life for a lot of us. Going to clubs, not clubs really, because I played with the band. I messed around, and we'd go to the bars and play, and we'd have a good time. And
Right.
but you can't do that forever.
No. Your time will come, though. It's just look at it this way. Look at all the money you saved. You don't have that habit. It doesn't take you an 18-pack to get, shit faced. It just, a couple of them, you get a good little buzz, you have a good time, and you wake up early, hopefully, the next morning. You don't have much of a backache or a headache.
Exactly. And that's another thing, too. Like now it's summertime, but I'll make margaritas. And I'll have maybe one. Or I'll have a couple of these hard ciders, but it's not like I drink every day or every month almost. It's
Right.
very rarely.
Right. Yeah.
So, and the thing is, like, I have a really bad back problem, and I have Oxycontins. I never used them
Yeah.
because I don't want to get addicted, number one.
Build that tolerance up.
Secondly, they make me sick. They actually make me sick. I get that feeling in my stomach. It makes me itchy. I get all kinds of crazy side effects. So I'd rather deal with the pain than take that garbage, to be honest.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah, there's a certain point. I believe you.
So I see, we hear all the horror stories, what's going on with the opioids around the country. It's sad, and I'm not gonna. I enjoy life every day, and I'm not gonna go to that point and start destroying myself.
Right.
But there's people that suffer from anxieties or post-traumatic PTSD. I mean, everybody has their own little, I guess, thing they have to deal with, but in general, I'm just dealing with physical pain.
Yeah. The older you get, the more stuff that it just will creep up on you.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, that wasn't an issue before. Now it is.
Exactly.
Like PTSD and stuff. I used to joke around. Friends were in the military and stuff, and I used to give them hell for it. Now it's like, okay, I see what's going on. It's like that stuff's real. It's very real. It's just like a UFO or sighting or experience. People might be until it happens to them, then their eyes are wide open.
Exactly. And how many people? I know there's a lot of people out there that either know somebody or a family member or friend, unfortunately, or someone. It's become to that point where we know people who have been affected that way.
Right.
Have suffered from having an addiction, or whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever it is. It's a sad and tragic thing, and how it affects the families and friends. And I mean, I remember younger when the cold crack epidemic came up, and people were desperate.
Wow.
They were robbing each other. They robbed their mothers, their families, and the desperation just to get high.
Just to get that extra, right.
You know, and that's sad. And again, tragic, but also dangerous. And I'm not talking about the physical aspect, also what you can do harm to others because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Due to an addiction.
Yeah, you lose all control at that point.
Yeah. I mean, just to get high. You don't really realize the damage you're doing to the people you love.
Exactly.
And the sad thing too is there's, like I told you in the past, the veterans in the homeless shelters, and they're not made mandatory to go get treatment. It's a voluntary thing. At least here in New York it is. I cannot understand that. How are you going to let these people continue knowing they have an addiction problem, say they can't force them to get treatment? It has to be voluntary. I just that's beyond bewildering. I can't even say the word.
Right.
Bewilderment. Yeah. It's insane. These people need help.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, it's a story for another day.
I was about to say that's a topic we could talk about for hours, man.
Yeah,
everyone
we'll go to
in
bed.
Skype would talk about
that. I got to get up early too, and we'll do this again tomorrow night. And Jello,
definitely.
Thank you for coming in for a few.
No, anytime, sir. Anytime. Hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow night.
All righty, Jello. Have a good night.
You too. Sounds good. Say hi to Ma.
I will. Bye.
All right. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. I am out of here for real. I hope that little YouTube thing, for those that wanted it, got it. I think Ken did. He's happy. The little download icon thing. Look at it. It got clear as all heck now. It's unbelievable. I'm almost giddy with upset. I'm so upset. Look at this. It cleared up. Anyway, good night, everybody. See you tomorrow night. We'll do it again. Till then, be well, be blessed, be safe. And take some time to give a hug to your family members and friends and show them that you care. All right, everybody. I am out of here.